Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019 at Washington School, 900 St. Mark's Avenue, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Wednesday, November 27, 2019, caused to be posted at the Office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, may we have a roll call?
Michael Beelan. Here. Kent Diamond. Here. Brendan Galligan. Here. Robert Garrison. Here. Brian Morrissey. Here. Gretchen Oleg. Here. Tara Porto. Peggy Oster.
Here.
Amy Root.
Here.
Can you join me in a flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Tonight, we are excited to be here at Washington School to celebrate your designation as a 2019 National Blue Ribbon School. On behalf of the entire Board of Education, I congratulate you on this prestigious recognition, and I thank your students, staff, and parent community for hosting us on this special occasion. I'm now going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Dolan to get the celebration started.
So I'd certainly like to echo Mrs. Oster's enthusiasm as we come together as a district to applaud the Washington School community, past and present, for this well-deserved honor. I was fortunate enough to be able to join Dr. Perry and Mr. Cognetti at the awards ceremony on November 15th at the National Harbor near Washington, D.C. Washington School was among 312 public and 50 non-public schools nationwide to receive the National Blue Ribbons Award. I would now like to invite Dr. Perry to the podium to speak to this important recognition of Washington's long-standing commitment to the district's tradition of excellence. Dr. Perry.
Thanks, Dr. Dolan. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many people here. Kids, parents, teachers. We're honored that the Board of Education is having your meeting here. We really appreciate that. And one thing that I wrote to the parents about and was a little bit slow to realize myself is the time that Dr. Dolan has taken all throughout this process to be supportive to us. But to me, nothing spoke louder than her taking 2 days and leaving the district and coming with us to Washington, D.C. And I think she had a good time. I think we have one picture of, one of her. And I said, I have certain lines that I cross out as I go along.
That's good, that's good.
So we're glad everyone's here. Even if you're from North Dakota, we're going to have some special treats. Who's our band teacher, anyway? We wouldn't be able to do half the things that we do without the participation and support of our parents and our community. And so we wanted to make sure that at least one speaker tonight could talk from a parent perspective, and no better person than Wendy Nietzsche, who's the current, in her second year as PTO president, and also one of our fairy godmothers. And please join me in welcoming Mrs. Nietzsche.
Good evening, Dr. Dolan, Board of Education members, parents, staff, Dr. Perry, and students. When asked what makes Washington such a special place, the parent community did not have a difficult time responding. There are many reasons why Washington is so great. It really isn't the air conditioning in every classroom, Chromebooks for every child, or even the test scores that indicate our excellence. What makes Washington special is the people in our community. It's not just the families who choose to get involved by selling pretzels, attending sing-alongs, and performing in our school show. We are fortunate to have dedicated teachers who instruct our students using best practices while integrating new programs. Washington is supported by a committed administration who strive to challenge, encourage, and prepare students every day. It's no wonder Washington has been recognized as a blue ribbon school. We all know well that Washington is not a singular cultural experience. Just ask anyone about the show. And yet, there is so much they don't know. They don't know that if you need 30 costumes altered, someone will step up and sew 40. Or dig into their archives and produce tap shoes, character shoes, light-up sneakers for you to borrow at a moment's notice, just like you would ask a neighbor for a cup of sugar. Or in those rare times in life when crisis strikes and you have no idea what you need, you will find meals on your doorstep, lunches packed for your children, carpools set up before you can even ask for help. We've all been a little nervous to let our children walk home alone from school until you realize every house they pass, they know who they are. They know where they live. They know who they belong to. They belong to Washington, a community that doesn't just put on the show, but a community that shows up for one another time and time again. When someone breaks something, a bone, a car, a heart, there is always someone with a doctor on call, a ride to the train, or a cup of tea and a hug. Sometimes it's the little things that count the most. We all know each other's children. We know them by face and by name. We see them on the playground, at the picnics, the Thanksgiving Turkey Bowl football game, on food days, at bingo night, and other family-centric events that are brought to you by the parents here. We all spend time here and have come to understand there is something uniquely special about our school. The school brings us all together. Families, teachers, and administrators set our children up for success academically, socially, and emotionally. The partnership between the staff and families of Washington creates an environment where our students take pride in their work, are motivated to excel, and love to come here every day. On behalf of myself and the PTO Executive Board, we thank everybody. And thank you, Dr. Perry, the staff, and the students for all your hard work. It's honored to be recognized as a National Blue Ribbon School.
I just said to Mrs. Nietzsche, I am so glad that I asked her to do that, because that was just perfect, and really all the things sort of that we're not going to cover because they're from a parent's point of view. So one of the things about Mrs. Nietzsche is there's a craftsmanship that she knows how to put together a little speech. And
caring and sharing is a feather in our cap. Thanksgiving dinners, gifts for the holidays, how about that?
I don't know, there's some weird stuff happening here. So, Paul Panera, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, recently shared with us a story from the Washington Post. Now, you may not have realized that the Washington Post is really a school newspaper that we put out every day. But the main finding was that students in high-achieving schools are now named an at-risk group. And I'm summarizing it greatly, but you can find it easily online. Adolescents who believed that both of their parents valued character traits to be respectful, helpful, and kind to others as much or more than achievement exhibited better outcomes at school, greater mental health, and less rule-breaking behavior. So that sounds awfully good, and to me, it also exemplifies many of the things that I think we have done over the years at Washington School. Even in South Dakota, they are having this same... Yeah, we could have done that one all night. If you're getting the picture, you might hear from them again. So there are a bunch of things that I wanted to mention that I think go along with that idea of valuing character traits as well as achievement. And one of my favorite pictures is this one that we picked to go along with our application for the Blue Ribbon Award. And I'll tell you why I like it so much. And some people thought we should pick a different picture, but here's what I love about this one. And taken by Mrs. McGann, I believe, who takes great pictures. But it's so spontaneous, and it's just kids laughing and having a great time at school. So how do you get better than that? It's at one of our sing-alongs, one of our activities that is not academic, but no doubt enriches everything about academics. I love the idea that we snuck in the Valentine's sign back there. And the other thing that you wouldn't know is that was the first time we used band risers, so that because until last year, as many parents will remember, if you came to a sing-along and your child wasn't in the front row, well, you're sort of out of luck, hard to see. So one of the things that we were able to purchase was band risers, and it was a little bit easier to see kids. So I'm going to tell you about a couple of other things that I think make our school special besides our achievement, and certainly one of them is our school show, our makerspace programs, which you'll hear a little bit more later, our 5th grade trip to Fairview Lake. Some of the other things we do are monthly sandwiches for St. Joe's, the safety program for the 5th graders, teacher treasures, volleyball game, school garden, playground, food allergy celebration, game night, sing-alongs, concerts like this one, Artsonia, field day, Spanish, mindfulness, our guidance counselor, yoga. That's a hard one to see. Our school store that the 5th graders do to raise money for a scholarship for a former Washington student who's going to college. $50,000 we offer. All right, a couple of extra zeros in there, $500. Our craft fair, the Wax Museum, Women's Tea, poetry, and Lorraine Gross, who's been with us for so many years helping us with poetry. The senior clap-out, community service night, art murals in the gym, our head custodian who's from Guatemala and visits classes to tell his story, and our, get ready for this one, nonagenarians. Anyone know what a nonagenarian is? Bob Lewis, do you know what a nonagenarian is? Nonagenarians are folks who are in their 90s. So we have 3 of them that we love. Our crossing guard Bob Lewis, who's here, Mr. O'Heron. Mr. O'Heron, who visits one of our classes for many, many years now and talks to them about things that we understand, but they have no inkling of, and he brings in artifacts from his past. And our lunch aide, Betty, who moved, I guess now it's 2 years ago, but she also worked with us through her 90s. And again, they have such craftsmanship when it comes to all the things that they do as well.
Chromebooks, iPads, and smartboards galore. We literally have technology from the ceiling to the floor.
So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about how we got selected. So it's been 11 months since Mrs. Oster put her John Hancock to our application. So it's been a long time coming. And it would be great if the federal government looks for schools who do all the character things and tries to designate them as blue ribbon schools, but they look at achievement and growth. And so we're going to talk just for a minute about some of the achievement that our kids do and their growth. So, for example, next slide. It's a little hard to see, but I'm going to summarize it. I'm going to show you 2 slides from the most recent New Jersey Learning Assessments, used to be called PARC. These 2 are from 4th grade, and this first one is for math. And the columns, that's very hard to see, but there are 5 areas that a student can be in, going from mastery to just barely learning. And we always have various amounts of students in every category. So this is our current 5th grade, last year's 4th grade. How many students were in the first category? Level 1, big 0. How many in the second category, level 2? A big 0. How many in level 3? 1. How many in the 4 and 5, which is where you want everyone to be? Whoops, did this get caught off? I think the total there is about 98%. I think it's off the slide a little bit. But figure 98% of our 4th graders are in the 4th and 5th categories. So that's math. Achievement, language arts, you'll see is not much different. How many students in the first level? Zip. Second level? None. Third level? 2. And everyone else is in the 4th and 5th levels. And again, the percentage I think got cut off there, but 96%. Thank my statisticians in the truck. So what's great is to have a school that's got all the other stuff and this stuff. And sometimes, to go over information that you get from the state, sometimes you need a decoder ring just to be able to figure everything out. And that's the last time you're going to interrupt me. but it was 3 great interruptions. So it wasn't until September 20th of this year that the Department of Education officially announced the recipients. And this was the moment of truth. It was a lot longer than that because we strung it out for the kids, but you get the idea. When we were in Washington, D.C., and waiting our turn to be called up to receive our ceremonial plaque and flag, and I was talking to a teacher today who told me who wanted to know where the flag was. Now, I'm not sure if you all know where the flag is. It's been hanging in a certain spot for 2 weeks now since we came back. And it's a little hidden. It's hard to see back there, but that's where the flag is. So we started receiving some texts and pictures from teachers and students. So this was one of them. So next one. So we're different schools are being called up in pretty much alphabetical order, and Dr. Dolan, Mr. Cognetti, and I are waiting for our turn, and all of a sudden, Mr. Cognetti and I start getting these texts and pictures. So this is one class. They're using their math knowledge to complete a graph to determine whether Mr. Cognetti and I will dance when we go up. Had we thought about doing that before these texts? Not on your life. Could we disappoint our students who are watching this live? No way. So these next 4 pictures just give you a little taste of the different classes that were watching this. And I'm going to show you just one short video of a scene that was repeated throughout Washington classrooms. I have about 10 more of those videos from all the different classrooms. I'm sparing you, but most of them are accessible. If you want to see them, you just shoot me an email and get some popcorn, and you'll have a great time. Finally, while completing a Thanksgiving list of things that one of our students was grateful for, one item that made the list was this next one. Can you hit the Zoom button just to get a little closer? So this is a list of things that I'm thankful for. And right after books and right before pets, a blue ribbon school. Sometimes you just can't stop the feeling when everyone just works together and does a great job.
It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. All through my city, all through my home. I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. All through my city, all through my home. We're flying up, no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off of it, moving so phenomenally. You're more like the way we rock it, so don't stop. And under the lights when everything goes, nowhere to hide when I'm getting you close. When we move, well, you already know. So just imagine. Nothing I can see but you when you dance, dance, dance. Feel good, good creeping up on you. So just dance, dance, dance. Come on. All those things I shouldn't do, but you dance.
I don't know how in the world you ever learned how to do that. Dr. Dolan, we have until about 10 o'clock for us, right? Okay. So, last Friday, our intrepid resident photographer, John Borja, went around the school visiting classes. And he's put together this 10-minute video that we would like to share with you at this time.
What do you think about 2 o'clock this morning?
I think that being a blue ribbon school has to be about more than test scores and statistics and things like that, because the kinds of schools that have the test scores and statistics are the ones that also have flourishing, thriving other programs.
I think the sense of community that we have here at Washington School, one of the first things that I noticed when my son entered here 4 years ago was just how much everybody cared. Not only the staff and the teachers, but also the parents. It's a school where really everybody does know your name. I couldn't ask for a better experience for my boys to be in an elementary school.
It's really a special community. My daughter started here last year as a first grader. We came from a private kindergarten, and so there were nerves both from the parents and from her, and we were just welcomed in, and here where everyone knows each other, where everybody pitches in, where everyone is incredibly welcoming, and it fosters a really incredible educational environment for the kids.
I think the community at Washington School is above and beyond. I've never felt anything like it. There's so many people who are just friendly to each other and helping each other out, and we're all very involved in the school as much as you possibly can, whether you're a full-time person with work or a part-time or whatever. Everybody does what they can. I'm really grateful that I get to work with all of the kids and I see them grow year after year. They're with me from first grade all the way to fifth grade, and I can see them growing and changing. I love the makerspace activities that we do together, where they're really collaborating with each other, and they have these STEM challenges and they're working together, and it's really an awesome place to be.
Try hands to make fun. Oh, all right, go ahead. So 1, you gotta count. 2, 3, 4, 5. 22. 24, 25, 80. No! 81. No.
I've been here about maybe 8 or 9 years now, and what I love about Washington School most of all is the fact that my 3 children all went through Washington School. So I have the roots right away of the knowledge and the character that's developed for my 3 children. Probably the main reason that I love it, but how it continues on to today. When I substitute also at Roosevelt School and the high school, you can see the roots that have matured going into Roosevelt and into the high school. And where does it come from? Washington School.
I get to come and do what I love every single day and know that I'm fully supported by the Board of Ed, by the PTO, by Dr. Perry, by my coworkers, and that allows me to do my best job.
I love Michaela, Colette, Dawn, Nina, Zyla, Josie, Ava, Charlotte, and Mrs. Ghostin. She is the best.
For me, it's the little things. When former students come back and they are proud of something that they've done in class, or they have finally been able to figure out how to write that essay they've been struggling with, so for me, it's those little things in school, is that when I wake up in the morning, I don't feel like I'm going to work. I feel like I'm, just heading to just another home that I have, a home away from home. I feel like these are my children, my colleagues are my siblings, and we're all just, we work together, and that makes it special.
And that translates to what community we've created here at Washington. Washington's not just a school, it's a community that has fostered this sense of interdependence. We depend on the kids, they depend on us. And that sense of it is what I want to come to work for every day.
My Washington school kids are my babies. They're my children away from home. I try to take care of them in any way I can, whether it's mothering, whether it's giving medication, whether it's teaching health. I like to get to know them in and out of the classroom, and I think I do.
I think a huge part of it are the teachers. I am so impressed by the level of enthusiasm that they bring every day. The passion that these teachers have for the entire learning process and for children in general is mind-blowing.
Well, I think what makes it most special is really the quality of the teachers. They're incredible. They go above and beyond. They put in time outside of school hours. Last night was game night here, and the teachers were here calling the bingo numbers, and you really just see how much they care about the students and how much they care about the community here.
All the teachers at the school love everyone, and they all help them, even if it's hard for them to learn.
Washington School is definitely deserving of a Blue Ribbon Award. I can really depend on the staff here to come through, make accommodations, and really go the extra mile for that child.
What I find to be incredibly special about Washington School is that the chemistry of the entire faculty just works perfectly, and everybody truly cares about the kids. I know I personally love every one of them like they're my own.
We have a lot of great people here, and all the teachers are great, and they all work hard to help teach everyone here.
Because there's loads of nice teachers, and the teachers help. Like, I'm in Mrs. Stevenson's class, and she helps me do a lot of stuff.
Dr. Perry, he lets us bring our own talents to the table, and if we have something that we want to try out in the classroom that's new and different, he, troubleshoots it with us, hears what we have to say, and then almost always gives us that green light to go ahead and do it. So I am very appreciative of the freedoms that I have, and I think our students benefit from it.
Dr. Perry is a great principal, and I think he teaches all the teachers really good, and he's just a great principal.
He's innovative. If he, just bringing in things like mindfulness and yoga and stress relief for both staff and students, I think that that's big, because I think that stress over the years, we expect more and more and more from our students every year, and it shows. I mean, the stress level is going up, and we need something to bring it down. And I think that bringing in things like mindfulness and yoga are nice steps in the right direction.
I think Washington School is a special place to be because we value the contributions of all members of the educational community. I have some great parent volunteers, really supportive staff, and enthusiastic families that are all involved in different ways in our program.
Here, I think that parents are very involved in the school, which definitely helps. And they're willing to do anything, anytime, for any reason. And I think that our children, our students, are high achievers, and I think that they want to be successful, and they work hard, and we have high expectations for them, and they meet our expectations.
So we were named the Blue Ribbon School, and that's like a special award. Not every school has a chance to be that. So, and we were one of the schools that got a chance. So it's like you have to be thankful for being able to have that accomplishment.
Washington School, they make learning fun because they always have these field trips about it, and they also make these fundraisers, 5th grade parties, so they make it very fun.
I'm most grateful for the family feeling here. Students and teachers and families genuinely like each other, care for one another day in and day out.
I do.
I do.
I do. We do.
I do.
We do. I do.
I do.
I do. I do. We do.
Washington School is a wonderful place and deserving of a Blue Ribbon for Excellence award. But I think the federal government stumbled onto us by almost accident. But the criteria for being a Blue Ribbon school, as far as the government is concerned, has nothing to do with whether teachers work well together, whether kids are happy coming to school, whether they're getting a well-rounded education that includes learning how to handle social dilemmas or learning about mindfulness or community service projects. And I'd love to be able to say that we won this award because of our well-roundedness and the way we work well together. But that's just not the criteria for Blue Ribbon School for Excellence. So I'm glad they found us. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Borja, stand up, take a bow. All right, I told you everyone's going to be talking about that at the water cooler tomorrow, right? We decided that, like any good movie, you're just seeing it tonight. We're not going to release it to Netflix for like a couple of weeks, and it probably won't be available on other streaming devices for months. So we're gonna be finished in a minute, and I invite you to help yourself to some refreshments and mingle for a few minutes before the Board of Education meeting resumes. We thank you again for honoring us tonight, and we really appreciate it. And thanks so much to everyone who came tonight and for everyone that makes this just a great place to work. Good job, everyone.
Thank you very much. First, I'd just like to congratulate Washington School. It is a true accomplishment, and for everybody here, it's something that you'll remember for a very long time. And I, too, am thankful that they found you, and I'm thankful that you included us in this whole presentation. And all I have to say is, you know, everybody should just keep on dancing. So, but moving on to business. Announcements. Rob?
Yes, I have one. A total of 29 winter concerts are taking place in Westfield Public Schools beginning tonight and ending February 8th. The entire schedule can be found on the district's website at www.westfieldnjk12.org in the December-January edition of Arts a la carte. Westfield senior citizens are once again invited to the final rehearsal of Westfield High School's Winter Choral Concert on Wednesday, December 18th from 10:45 to 11:45 a.m. in the high school's auditorium at 550 Doreen Road. There is ramp access at the front of the auditorium. For security reasons, all senior residents planning to attend the special daytime performance should contact Coordinator of School and Community Relations, Mary Ann McGann, at 908-789-4463 or M. McGann, MMCGANN, at westfieldnjk12.org at least 24 hours in advance to make appointment to attend.
Great. Can I ask everyone, you have to talk closely into the mic because we're not at our regular place, so just...
How's this, Peggy?
Yeah.
We applaud the cast and crew of Roosevelt's fall production of The Outsiders. Congratulations to our talented students, play director Kimberly Johnny, and the parents and others who work behind the scenes to help bring these amazing productions to the stage.
Thank you. Michael?
Congratulations to Westfield High School seniors Brad Hornbeck, Jeremy Kronmeyer, Stephen Park, and Angela Wang for their perfect scores of 800 on the Math Level 2 portion of the October SAT. Great job.
Brendan?
Congratulations to the cast and crew of Westfield High School's fall production, Radium Girls, which was performed before an enthusiastic audience last month. Hats off as well to director Daniel Devlin and the dedicated theater parent community that supports each production.
Thank you. Brian?
Looking ahead to the 2020-2021 school year, in January, the district will conduct kindergarten registration for all children who are residents of Westfield and will reach the age of 5 on or before October 1st, 2020. First grade registration also will be held for children who are residents of Westfield and will reach the age of 6 on or before October 1st, 2020, and have not yet attended the Westfield Public Schools. The registration schedule and forms are posted on the district's website on the Family Resources tab under Student Registration.
Ken?
Thank you. Congratulations to the Westfield High School social studies teachers Kimberly Legan and English teacher Stephen Cohen, who gave a presentation at the annual conference of the National Council for the Social Studies in Austin, Texas on November 23rd and 24th, 2019. The presentation proposal was selected through a rigorous juried process from among more than 1,300 submissions. Mrs. Legan and Mr. Cohen's presentation was entitled Choosing to Participate, Lessons Learned from Maycomb, which looked at the ways students can develop empathy, apply knowledge, and take informed action through service learning, built upon lessons inspired by the classic novel To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Andrea Brennan, supervisor of K-12 social studies, also attended the conference. And next, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Instruction, and Programs, Paul Pinero, and other New Jersey educators recently welcomed a Chinese delegation of elementary school principals to the Garden State as part of a Kean University program that pairs elementary, middle, and high schools in New Jersey with counterparts in China. Mr. Pinero visited China in June as part of his educational partnership that focuses on innovation and development in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The full story on this STEAM partnership can be found on the district website at www.westfieldnjk12.org.
Thank you. Gretchen?
I have two announcements. So there's no shortage of year-round examples of how our students, staff, and families give back to the community in a variety of ways. And with the holiday season, it's certainly an important time to remember those less fortunate. So we just want to take a minute tonight to thank all of our school communities for food drives, winter coat collections, holiday gift giving, and the many other service-based initiatives to support others in the time of need. I also want to wish congratulations to the following Westfield High School choir students who are among the top high school musicians in New Jersey to perform with the All-State Chorus in Atlantic City on November 8th and at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center on November 17th. Daniel Andrade, Luke Berry, Olivia Ebel, Charles Gerritsen, Sam Horvath, Zaria Katz, Joshua Madera, Finn McGurn, Matthew Meixner, Vincent Mora, Ashik Pallet, Elisa St. Dennis, and Rachel Seiden. Congratulations to all of those students.
Thank you. Amy?
Yep, I have two as well. A team of 6 Jefferson School 5th graders will compete in the state championship of the First Lego League, a robotics competition that has students ages 9 through 14 designing, building, programming, and testing an autonomous robot while applying real-world math and science concepts. Team Ligorio's members are Luke Jenner, Neve Nedungadi, Mahi Panjwani, Aaron Rudnick, Evan Tukachinsky, and Wilson Wright. They were one of 5 teams out of 24 to advance during a qualifying round on November 24th. The team also won the Project Award for Outstanding Innovative Project. Team Ligorio, which is run by parent volunteers, will compete against 80 teams from across the state on December 14th and 15th. And Peggy's favorite, the Westfield Public Schools will be closed for winter break from Monday, December 23rd through Wednesday, January 1st.
I live to love that announcement. Dr. Dolan, do you have any announcements?
I do not.
I'd like to let you know that the next meeting of the Westfield Board of Education will include the reorganization of the board and will be held on Tuesday, January 7th at 7:30 p.m. at 302 Elm Street. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, January 3rd on the board section of the district website. At this time, I'd like to recognize the public for agenda items only. Seeing nobody come forth to the podium, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Dolan.
Thank you. So each year, the district has an outside auditor who comes in to review all of our finance procedures in the district. And I'm going to turn the presentation first over to our business administrator, Dana Sullivan.
Yes, so the firm of Hodgelick & Morrison has been doing our audit. They have now been purchased by PKF, O'Connor Davies, sorry. So we have had auditors in the district. They started about the end of August, and they've just completed the end of last week their work auditing all aspects of the finances of the district, accounts payable, payroll, internal controls. With us tonight, we have Bob Morrison, who's a partner with that firm. He also met with the Finance Committee on November 15th and presented the audit and his management report, and he's with us tonight to just give us an overview of the audit report. Bob?
Good evening, everyone. I would first like to point out that we are in the second year of a new reporting requirement. In the technical jargon, it's called GASB 75, Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 75, which requires recognition of post-employment health benefit costs in the entity-wide financial statements. Those numbers are produced by the state of New Jersey's Division of Pensions, and for the second year in a row, they have been late getting those numbers out. As a result, the statutory filing deadline has been extended to December 23rd. We ran hard copies of the reports today. We hope to file tomorrow. So we will meet the filing deadline. That said, it gets a little crazy around this time of year when you've had reports sitting on a shelf for a month, and then you have to go back to them, insert data in 5 different places, and then run it through quality control again. So I'm a little crazy tonight. However, and I'll never be able to outdo the presentation that preceded me, but I am not bringing anything but good news tonight. The comprehensive annual financial report was sent out to the board members last week. We had an extensive meeting with the Finance Committee about 10 days ago where we covered a broad range of topics. I talked about what I consider some of the best practices that the district has. Mentioned the fact that I use you as an example for some of my less motivated districts. And as a result, I mentioned at that time that our opinion on the financial statements is unmodified. Now, an auditor's report is basically the result of a long process where we gather evidence. We look to determine whether or not the dollars in the financial statements are correct in all respects, that they have been calculated using the appropriate accounting standards, and that those standards have been applied consistently from year to year. When we get done with that, we take a look at what we've gathered during the course of our audit during our substantive practice of the audit and make a determination. If we're satisfied, we issue what's called an unmodified opinion, and that's what you have here. It's the most positive report an auditor can issue. In addition to following generally accepted auditing standards, which are promulgated by the American Institute of CPAs Auditing Standards Board, we also have to follow an expanded scope engagement based on the district's receipt of federal and state grant funds. As a result of your excess of $750,000 of state and federal grant funding, we have to follow additional auditing standards included in a book promulgated by the Office of Management and Budget of the federal government known as Government Auditing Standards. It basically requires us to expand the scope of our audit to not only evaluate internal controls, but to test internal controls, and to not only evaluate your compliance with laws and regulations, but to test that compliance, both on an entity-wide level and at the individual grant level for what we determine to be major grant programs. And major grant programs are determined using a variety of factors. The dollar value of the grant program is always a factor. The complexity of the compliance requirements for that grant program is always a factor. The relative newness to the district is always a factor, because a new program is going to have a new program coordinator who may never have run this program before, and that would increase the risk that something could go wrong in the compliance section. So we try to focus in on the areas where we perceive the greatest risk that the district could have something wrong, and we focus our audit efforts there. When we get done with the internal controls testings and when we get done with the compliance testing, we issue 2 additional reports. They're both found in the K section of the audit. The first one is a report on the district-wide internal control structure and its compliance with laws and regulations. That, not surprisingly, is also an unmodified opinion, which basically means that based on our tests, we found the district is complying with all the laws and regulations that we tested, and that the internal control structure has been designed appropriately for an organization of your size, that the internal controls have been placed into operation and they are operating effectively, meaning that they're catching what they're supposed to catch, right? Nobody expects an organization to never make a financial accounting mistake. The objective of internal control is to identify a mistake in a timely fashion so it can be corrected before financial information gets out to the governing body and the public. We found in the course of our audit that your financial information that you receive and that we received in the form of your year-end financial statements was completely accurate. We have no audit adjustments to your financial records this year. That is a compliment to the business office staff. In addition, in the auditor's management report, seasoned board members know to go to the last page, which is the comments. The last page is the recommendations. We have no recommendations for corrective actions, and the board has no obligation to, have nothing to implement in the way of a corrective action plan. So that's also very positive news. As far as your financial statements go, there's a couple of things that I like to emphasize on an annual basis. Number one, the district has been putting money into reserves, a capital reserve, a maintenance reserve. You keep money in an emergency reserve in case something goes wrong. Those are important to have. The emergency reserve, first and foremost, because your budgets are not designed to handle something significantly going wrong at a building level, right? If you need a new roof in the middle of the year, there's very little you can do other than have a reserve or find something else in the budget to cut to come up with those funds. With the capital reserve and the maintenance reserve, we think those are very positive because they keep you from having to borrow. And the cost of debt can be very expensive. Years ago, we did a calculation using a 20-year life on a bond with equal principal payments for each of the 20 years and at a 5% rate of interest. And what you found out over 20 years is for every dollar you borrowed, you also paid $1 of interest. So interest rates are not running at 5% anymore, which was what we calculated. They're more like 2.5%. So now you save 50 cents for every dollar you didn't borrow. And last year, you put over $7 million of capital reserves into capital projects. So you can do the math and you can see that you're doing the taxpayers a service by building those reserves and using them in lieu of debt. The other thing that I want to mention is the limitations that the state puts on this district and every district in the state of New Jersey with respect to your tax levy, right? If your costs go up at a rate greater than 2%, you're stuck because you can't raise your taxes more than 2%. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to the rule, but basically it's a pretty hard 2% cap. So we encourage our school districts to build those reserves because not only can't you raise taxes, the state has limited the amount of free balance that you can retain. It's limited to 2% of your operating expenditures for the year before. So you spend somewhere in the realm of $110 million a year, you're only allowed to keep 2% of that as your free balance. So that doesn't give you a big cushion either. But notwithstanding the fact that the state goes out of its way to keep school districts from building a solid financial position, Westfield has built as solid a financial base as any of my clients and as good as I would trust any district in the state of New Jersey. So you should be pretty satisfied with where you are financially. There's not very much more you could do. With that, if there are any questions. Well, in that case, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the personnel of the district, in particular the business office staff. They make our job very easy, and we appreciate that. They cooperate with us. They go out of their way to get us what we want in a timely fashion, and it's not hard for me to staff this job. People like working here. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana Sullivan.
Thank you, Bob. We, of course, always like a good report, but we earlier saw that we have special schools, and I do want to call out Dana Sullivan and her department. Dana, since I've been on the board, I don't think you've gotten one comment or whatever, so you do an amazing job, your staff does an amazing job, and we can't thank you enough for what you do, so thank you.
How much time does the audit take of your staff's time?
Oh, it takes a tremendous amount of time. They not only do they come into the office and literally stay in the office for several weeks, they're also off-site, and we're electronically sending them documents and answering questions, and it's a considerable amount of time every year.
Continuing the business of the district.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'd like the board to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on November 12th and the private minutes of November 12th, 2019. Do I have a second? Brian, all in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay. Personnel, Amy.
I'd like the board to consider personnel items 1 through 26. Can I have a second? Thank you, Kent. Dr. Dolan, is there one?
Yes, I do have one retirement to acknowledge. Tonight, I'm announcing with regret the retirement of a long-standing and beloved substitute. For more than 23 years, Ellen Shapiro has been a welcome and valued addition to our elementary schools. After a full career as a music teacher, Ellen decided she had more to give and began to substitute in the Westfield schools. She has covered a number of long-term assignments and has been gracious in saying yes to last-minute assignments as well. Ellen will be greatly missed, and we wish her well in her second retirement.
Vote. Mike Beeline?
Yes.
Ken Diamond?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Robert Garrison?
Yes.
Brian Morrissey?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig? Yes. Tara Porta?
Yes.
Peggy Astor?
Yes.
Amy Root?
Yes.
Thank you. Gretchen, do you have a facilities report?
No report tonight. There's a facilities all that just to say we have no report for facilities tonight. There's a facilities committee meeting this Friday morning at 8, and Dana and I will touch base and circulate an agenda. Dana, I don't know if there's any facilities update from your office. No.
Thank you. Amy, long-range planning.
The Long Range Planning Committee met tonight before the board meeting to discuss some options for implementing full-day kindergarten. The board had discussed proceeding with a referendum for constructing additional classrooms. In August, the board heard from the district architect regarding tentative plans for additions to Washington and Jefferson. At this time, we are continuing to explore a few additional options to ensure that we have exhausted all reasonable alternatives before committing to a referendum. I know at one point we had discussed having on the agenda tonight a vote about moving forward with the referendum. It's not on the agenda, and that's why, and when I can communicate to all of you, unfortunately didn't have time with all the hoopla, but we'll get word out to the full board and let you know how things stand. But as the board moves forward, we will communicate the information necessary for the Westfield community to understand the options and challenges relative to implementing full-day kindergarten. So I know that's a little opaque, but at this point, there's really not much more that I can say at the microphone. But if anybody has any questions or comments, I'm willing to.
Do we have a rough timeline as to when those other options will be shared with the rest of the board?
We're hopeful that certainly if we're going to move ahead with a March referendum for building, we need to make a decision and vote on January 7th. So we have a pretty tight turnaround time, given that we are looking at some other potential options. So hopefully we'll either have something to report or we'll be voting. Yeah. Oh.
I think too, Brian, that there will be upcoming opportunities in other committee contacts to share information that the Long Range Planning Committee learned today with other board members, so we can equalize knowledge on that end, and then make a decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
And truly what we're trying to do is truly look at all options, do our due diligence. And I know that's frustrating because we want to have answers right away. But that's our job, is to do the due diligence and make sure we're looking into everything. So we'll continue to report as there is something to report, but no action certainly tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Brendan, policies?
Yes. I'll start by asking the board to approve policy item number 1. Thank you, Kent. This is the 2021-2022 school year calendar. At our last meeting, we voted to close school on Election Day for 2020. Because of the disruption to the schedule that will cause, we're hopeful that we won't have to close on Election Day in 2021. But we have a schedule that's flexible enough that if we have to close, it's not going to have major impact to holiday schedules, particularly around an extra day, whether we close on Election Day or Easter Monday after spring break. Give people plenty of time to adjust their schedules if we do have to close for Election Day. Any questions? All right, Dana?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, and I ask the board to approve policy items numbers 2 and 3. Thank you, Kent. I'll start with our use of school facilities policy. This is probably our most amended policy since we implemented it, but we're always finding something else that comes up. And this time we're putting an explicit prohibition on partisan political activities and electioneering on school grounds. The town was kind enough to put up signs for us this election day that said, per board policy, you can't campaign on school grounds. We didn't have that in our policy, so now we're happy for the signs, but we built the policy around it. The other policies I want to address are our board bylaws. 95% of them are strict statute. They don't change ever unless the state does. But we are amending a couple of them. In the past, we've really tried to remove specific references to state tests, state deadlines, all sorts of things, because every time there's a new governor or a new head of a state agency, they change things. They like to rebrand things, and then we're stuck amending policies with no substantive change. So starting with vacancies, if somebody were to resign, we were stuck to a hard deadline in June, or per our policy, whether they have to run for re-election that year or the following year. Now we're saying if you're appointed within 7 days of the petition being done, whenever that is, you get to stay on for a full year before you have to run again. You don't have to rush out and get a petition signed in 2 days if you want to stay on the board in the following election. Other things we're dealing with are, we had a board policy about awarding new contracts in our reorganization meeting. Well, if we don't do that, the policy said we had to then start over after we voted to not continue a contract. We can't not have a board attorney. So we would want the process to start with all of our other contracts for professional services, find the new replacement before we vote to terminate an agreement. And the last one is public participation in meetings. Sorry, one more before that. This year we're lucky that we have no changes to the board going forward. So we're going to change the rules for who can be board president or vice president to somebody who's been on the board for at least a full year. It impacts nobody at this table now, but will going forward. And public comments. We want people to come to our meetings and participate, but we want it to be on topic and polite comments, not attacking. But all comments will go directly to the board president now, and he or she will decide who then responds, if anybody responds to a comment. These are the rules that we set to govern ourselves. So I really wanted to take the time to call out what we're doing in much more detail than I normally would for small policy changes. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? No, I threw a lot of information at you. All right, Dana?
Yeah. Yes.
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 And then I asked the board to approve policy item number 4, affirming the superintendent's decision in HIB incidents 20E02, 20R02 for the reasons set forth therein.
Second.
Thank you, Kent. Dana?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And our next policy meeting is next Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Brendan. We move on to curriculum. Amy.
We're going to do this a tiny bit differently than we normally do. I would like the board to consider items 1, 2, and 4 under curriculum. If I could have a second, please. Thank you, Kent. Briefly, district field trips and overnight field trips are item number 1. Item number 2 are curriculum items for first reading. So these were ones that we covered in our November 21st meeting. I circulated some notes this morning about those. High school journalism classes. We heard from the media specialists from Roosevelt, Edison, and the high school about really some exciting things that are happening in our libraries. Any of you who were here for the Washington presentation saw some great images of what's happening in the maker spaces, and that's also happening at the middle schools and the high school. So that was pretty interesting. We even got to see some enhanced reality, I think it was. Yes, yeah, which augmented reality. Yeah. So there's great stuff happening there, and it was really nice to be able to meet with those staff members. The practical arts curriculum, financial literacy was a revision of a class that's been taught at the high school for a while. And the TV production 3, the morning show, is something new that's going to be made possible because of the renovations to the TV studio at the high school. They're going to be able to do a live show going forward and time it up so that they can do it during homeroom every morning, which is really cool and exciting. I mentioned it to somebody who I knew whose daughter was really interested in it this morning, and she said, oh, she's going to be so bummed she missed it. So anyway, fun things happening in curriculum. And then item number 4 is, I believe it's 2, student, teacher, and intern candidates for the school year. So let's take a vote on that, and then we'll separately consider the other item. Okay? Unless anybody has any questions about those items. No? Okay.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Okay, and then I would like the board to consider curriculum item number 3. Rob, thank you. This is a second reading of curricula that we discussed at our last meeting. A new high school elective called Power, Privilege, and Imbalance in America, which we anticipate some comments about, so we'll get to that. And then the other item was also for second reading, dance curriculum that needed to be developed and is broken out according to what we've got here. So I would like to just make one clarification. You did second, right? So I can go ahead and make some comments. There was one thing that I wanted to clarify, and it's something that I got wrong at our last meeting regarding the timeline of how the course was developed. At our last meeting, I had said that the social studies supervisor had come to a full board meeting in 2018 to talk about the class, and I got that wrong. She had actually come to talk about something else. But I do want to just sort of reiterate that the class we did discuss the class in our curriculum committee meeting in June of 2018 with the social studies supervisor and both teachers present. And before it ever came to our committee, it had been discussed and developed with building and content supervisors, including then Principal Derek Nelson, with counselors, and with the social studies department staff. It was then vetted by district staff in what's called instructional council before it ever came to us in curriculum. The course was not offered for last year, so that is why there was a gap between that initial conversation and now. Ms. Brennan did come back to the curriculum committee this fall at our first meeting in September, and we revived the discussion with 2 new committee members present. The teachers and the administrator would like to be able to offer the class next year and would like it to be included in the course of studies document that is being shared with students starting next month. And that is why, although there has been a comment made by a board member that they'd like to defer voting for tonight, but that is why we would like to move forward with the vote. I know some other people want to make some comments, but I believe Dr. Dolan, you'd like to comment as well, or Peggy?
I just want to follow up with everybody. We're going to give, if the board members have any comments or whatever, we're going to give you an opportunity to state your comments and so forth. We'll start with Dr. Dolan, and following the board members stating their comments, we will open the podium up to the community if you would like to come speak, and we can talk about that after the board is finished with their comments.
So first, I'd like to thank those who have provided us with thoughtful comments about the proposed Westfield High School elective course, Power, Privilege, and Imbalance in American Society. As the board prepares to vote on the second reading of this elective course tonight, I feel it is important to provide some background on the process that led us to this point. So the district has more than 370 policies, and they are the bedrock of the school system. They direct and guide the actions and decisions of all the district stakeholders, including the Board of Education, its administrators and supervisors, and its teaching staff. These policies are reviewed and updated on a regular cycle. They provide the compass required to operate an effective educational institution where the needs of our students are the highest priority. So I think 2 particular policies are salient to this conversation. First, policy 2220, that's adoption of courses. It states in part that the superintendent or designee shall recommend to the board such new or altered courses as are deemed to be in the best interest of the pupils in this district. Policy 2240, controversial issues, states that the Board of Education believes that the consideration of controversial issues has a legitimate place in the instructional program of the schools. Properly introduced and conducted, the consideration of such issues can help pupils learn to identify important issues, explore fully and fairly all sides of an issue, weigh carefully the values and factors involved, and develop techniques for formulating and evaluating positions. So guided by these 2 policies, this course was developed by teachers who have knowledge in this area. They were guided by the social studies supervisor. When the draft of the course was completed, the proposed course was presented to the district's instructional council, and then to the board's curriculum instruction and program committee, and finally to the full board for first reading at the last meeting. This new course has been under discussion for almost 2 years with careful research and with reflection. Now, the evolution of this particular elective stems from the long-standing Westfield High School elective, African American Studies, which has been expanded in this proposed curriculum to a broader study of racial and ethnic minorities in contemporary America. I'd like to address two concerns that have been raised by community members. In order for this course to be successful, or for that matter, for the previous African American Studies course to have been successful, a classroom climate that promotes respectful dialogues must be established. This does not happen by chance. Over the past few years, the teachers in the secondary social studies department have been trained in civil discourse. Such training works to ensure balanced and objective views with no political agenda. Classroom teachers have a crucial role to play in helping students develop the skills of listening respectfully to different opinions and experiences, and in honestly participating in discussions without fear. I would also like to point out that one of the originators of this course is a Westfield High School teacher who is in the doctoral program at Rutgers University with an emphasis on equity in education. Also of note is that since the course evolved from the African American Studies course, the resources include much of what grounded that original course. However, additional resources which expand information and perspective were added to address the new objectives of this course. There are expanded courses specifically found in the theoretical framework and research section, as well as under the foundations and organizations listed under course resources. So according to our supervisor of K-12 social studies, Andrea Brennan, who was unable to be here tonight, the intent of power, privilege, and imbalance in American society is to develop a broader understanding of the minority experience within the scope of American history and society. Let me again highlight the fact that this is a one-semester elective course open only to juniors and seniors. Careful consideration has been given by the department to offer the course to the more mature students as they prepare to transition into the greater world and to the society beyond high school. And lastly, I believe that this elective is congruent with the district's mission statement, which reads, "The Westfield Public School District, in partnership with families and community, educates all students to reach their highest potential as productive, well-balanced, and responsible citizens who respect individual differences and diversity in an ever-changing world." I believe this course will respect and underscore our mission statement.
Thank you, Dr. Dolan. I think that was a very thorough analysis of how the course came about and the purpose of the course at our high school. So at this time, I'd like to give board members an opportunity if you have comments or have anything that you'd like to put on the table for this class.
Thank you for that and for the research that was done to prepare that statement. I have a copy here of the policy 2240, and there are other parts of that policy that this course outline violates. So I appreciate you reading part of it, but the part that I think is most important is the part that says, "The discussion of controversial issues must not indoctrinate pupils or seek to persuade them to a particular point of view." You actually also read the part about fairly showing all sides of an issue. The current course outline does not do that. There are many books that have been suggested by other members of the community. We actually all received an email a few days ago from one of them pointing out that the minority experience for that community is not fairly represented here. We have books like this one that I have mentioned, Beyond All Reason by Daniel Farber and Suzanne Shurry, where there is an entire chapter that talks about how critical race theory is anti-Semitic and anti-Asian American. So I feel extremely passionate about revising this course to represent all of the members of the community. And I'm really upset that it's not obvious that that is what's needed here. So that's what I have to say for now. I'll pass the mic to you.
Okay.
So I wrote something down just because I had some thoughts that I didn't want to lose, so I apologize for reading. But So the conversation that has occurred around this curriculum gives us an opportunity to pause and reflect upon our role as board members. We take a pledge to carry out our responsibilities, not to administer the schools, but to see that they are well run. We are a governing board. We set policies and procedures and then hire experts to run the district, to draft our curriculum, to educate our children. I feel we are losing perspective of this role in our conversations about this class. In my 8 years on the board, we've cycled through all the social studies courses at least once. In recognition of the fact that a curriculum document has been thoroughly vetted by staff and the administration, the education professionals, before it lands on our table, not once have we ever made it our business to analyze or make recommendations to the resource list for these courses. The very purpose of this class is to offer students, at their choosing, a chance to learn about the American experience from the perspective of ethnic minorities. And now suddenly, we are concerned about presenting a balanced perspective. All of the courses we've approved and that are taught primarily from one perspective, as was pointed out by a current student, that of the white majority. And not once did we complain that they weren't balanced. Not once did we criticize the resource list. I believe it's disingenuous to do so now. Rather, as we have always done, it's our job to govern and trust the educators to select appropriate materials and to expand on that resource list as they see appropriate. How are we better positioned to insert our judgment on these issues? As board and curriculum committee members, we are assigned a relatively straightforward task, that of evaluating whether a proposed curriculum document is aligned with state standards and the district's overall system of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. We ask whether it promotes academic success and well-being. We need to stay in our lane.
Thank you, Rob.
I too wrote some notes down. So over the past few weeks, I've heard terms like controversial, racist, divisive, unfair, and discriminatory. Vilification of leaders and the suppression of stories. What about balance and learning about the other side? Yes, I agree. Our history books for decades have been all of those things. And today's most popular news channels and social media outlets are much the same and even worse. These outlets show images of caravans of people streaming across the border tied to the idea of massive impenetrable walls along the border, men holding tiki torches protesting those who protest the glorification of those who fought for the oppression of African Americans and the actual dividing of our nation. Most students today have no sense of how society has impacted the plight of people of color and minorities. Very little is taught of their oppression, persecution, and struggles, nor their stories of perseverance and success. This course, on one hand, is a continuation of a lost course of African American studies, and yet, on the other hand, is the beginning of educating our students on the many other cultures that made our country what it is today. They will read books, essays, and articles that relate history in a way that has never been taught in our district. I hope this course to be a sea change of the history of our society and its people.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So at this time, I'd like to open up the podium for the community members. I'd like to make a couple of reminders to people. First, if you come to the podium, please state your name and address. As Brendan mentioned earlier, please direct all of your comments to myself as the board president. That is our policy. Please do not direct comments directly to any community members or any board members. Since this is our second reading of this policy, I would ask people to kind of stay within the 2 to 3 minutes time frame so that everybody has an opportunity to speak if they want to. We also ask that you only come and speak once, also for time for everybody. And lastly, please, I know this is a passionate class for many people, but I ask that you be respectful to everybody, their ideas, listen, think about what they're saying, and please do not be disrespectful. And if anybody is disrespectful, I will have to ask you to leave the meeting at that point in time. So I open up the podium to whoever would like to speak.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Wolf. I live at 310 First Street in Westfield. I'm a 24-year resident. Thank you for giving me a few moments to speak. I am happy to add my voice to the chorus of residents who seek the approval of this new elective social studies course at the high school. It studies American history through the experiences of racial minorities. Anecdotally, my daughter, who graduated in 2018, she's a sophomore in college studying civil engineering. During her senior year in the high school, Westfield High School, she was able to take a year-long elective honors course on design, engineering, and architecture. And it was great. And it was great for her. She loved it. It taught her about what she was hoping to study in college, and it was a hard, demanding class. And it added to the depth and the breadth of her educational experience. Some of the labs in her first year at engineering school were the same as the labs they did in the high school class. So I think it prepared her really well. And I think it was great that that class was offered. And I think it was great that she had the opportunity to take it. And I also think, quite frankly, that a class like that is what I expect from the school district. It is part of a rigorous college preparatory curriculum. So the elective that we're talking about tonight is about race and American history through the eyes of racial minorities. Since it is hard for us to talk about race in a critical way in America, I think it might be helpful if we consider an analogy, because I was at the last meeting. I've thought a lot about this, and I heard everyone's comments. And so I thought of it this way. If we were going to sit down and come up with design a course on comparative religions, right? And we could go the straightforward route, and we could say, teach the 5 major religions, and this is their tenets, and this is the texts they use, and this is what gods they believe in, and this is where they are in the world geographically, etc. But if we wanted to go for depth and breadth, we might want to then read material written by perhaps Hindus. And we would use those materials to explore what Hinduism has brought to their lives, and what their views on the world are affected by their Hinduism, and how being a Hindu has shaped them and their history. This is a deeper look at the subject, to look at it from the Hindu perspective. So this is what academic curiosity and rigor is about, and it's what I expect of our high school curriculum. That our students could be learning American history and the history of racial minorities through the perspectives of those minority groups, is fantastic. That they will learn about the African American experience through the eyes, voices, and viewpoints of James Baldwin, Brian Stevenson, Jesmond Ward, et cetera, is absolutely essential if we are to go for the depth and breadth approach to their education and our elective curriculum. The ability to look critically at history and society and contemporary issues with a wider lens is important not only for the future history majors amongst our students, but also for all students as they move on from our high school into the world. My daughter would have loved this course. To have the skill to be able to look at history or any situation through the eyes of others is a skill that would serve everyone well. I applaud the high school social studies department for coming up with this forward-thinking class, and I heartily encourage you all to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Elisa Sanneman. I live on Wyandotte Trail. I've lived in Westfield for 47 years. and both of my children went to Westfield High School. I'm the founder of a nonprofit organization that develops affordable housing for people with physical disabilities. And I'm a founding member of an anti-racism collaborative board in Westfield and Scotch Plains. A few years ago, I participated in dialogue circles on race, currently being offered in our community by the Anti-Racism Coalition. These were small, racially diverse discussion groups, which enabled white participants to explore their racial misperceptions and biases. My formal education, good as it was, had done nothing to illuminate or eradicate many pernicious views that I had inhaled as part of my culture. It was eye-opening. It's a study everyone in the majority culture needs to do, and for me, it will continue as part of my life learning. Westfield strives to provide its students a stellar education. The best way we can prepare our children for a diverse world is to give them the tools to understand the past and present from the lens of people of color. It's the basis for being able to communicate empathetically and thus effectively in an increasingly diverse world. I congratulate the Board of Education for supporting this critical and thought-provoking curriculum. I would like to share a few words that my daughter wrote to me. She's a Westfield High School graduate, 1988. She is a Master of Public Policy and a strategic planner for Mayor de Blasio. Studying the minority perspective, role, and voice is fundamental to understanding U.S. history and the American experience. When I attended Westfield High School in the late 80s, this was sorely lacking. My friends and I sought other perspectives beyond the school walls in off-campus discussions hosted by progressive teachers, spending time with people outside the confines of Westfield and exploring independently through books and music. I'm saddened to learn that more than 30 years, the decision is even in question. The obligation to integrate the voices of those left out of history is heightened by the privilege and lack of diversity of voice in the often racially homogeneous and economically advantaged Westfield High Schools, reinforcing the very structures that propagate racist, classist, and misogynistic systems. The course provides a critical first step to provide a truly rich first-class education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is James Lucarelli, 657 Carlton Road. Just give me a second. And I have to start by saying a few disclaimers. First of all, I live in Westfield, but I'm not from Westfield. I moved here about a little over 20 years ago. Secondly, I spent my whole career in New York City public schools. Okay, so I have a different perspective on things. So I just like to approach this from a critical point of view. I do a lot of fact-checking. Part of what I do now is I work for National Geographic Kids, and I do fact-checking for science books, because I have a science career. I want to approach it from a critical point of view. First of all, the big problem I have with this, first of all, is not the course. There's a lot of work went into this. I mean, I know I've done curriculum. This is a lot of work, and I didn't realize that it had been going on for so long. So I'd like to know, how much did it cost to produce this? Were the people paid to do curriculum? Because
Generally speaking, they're doing it during department meeting, et cetera. So I don't believe so.
I guess I was very lucky, because any curriculum I did for New York City Public Schools, and I did a few courses for Clark Public Schools, I was paid, so that clears that up. Thank you. The one big problem I have with this is that it says on content, scope, and sequence number 3, the The course is based on a theoretical framework of critical race theory. Now, it's a theory, and I don't like the fact that this course is built from that perspective. I think everyone should know the background of all minorities from their point of view. But the fact that it says it's built on critical race theory, I just can't buy that. I think that has to be revised a little bit, because if you look at what it actually is, the definition from the Britannica is to view that race, instead of being biologically grounded and natural, is socially constructed, and that race is a socially constructed concept. I mean, I have a science background. Believe me, I don't buy it. I mean, you may, and I understand if you don't. But I think this is not yet ready for prime time. I think it should be revised, and it should be emphasized that this critical race theory that it's based upon is a theory. It is not a scientific fact. And the kids have to know this. Secondly, the teacher is probably the most important component of this course. You have to have a teacher that has a real non-bias. It's very hard to find those people. Everybody's got biases, and if you say you don't, you're lying. So you have to make sure that this teacher is supervised well, and you have to make sure that the teacher is very, very knowledgeable and does not use any of their implicit biases in the teaching the class. And I have a lot of other stuff I wanted to say, but I think that'll do it for now. Okay? Thank you.
Lydia Kaplan. I live on 245 Clark Street. I've been living in Westfield since 1974. I'm a 1979 graduate of Westfield High School. Back in the day when it was called Edison Junior High, we had a course called Black Culture. And in the 70s, we had a course called Minorities in America in the high school. So I think this is very doable. I'm not really sure. This is not a brand new idea in our community. And one other thing, we also, if I'm not mistaken, teach the theory of relativity in high school.
Hello, I'm Kathy O'Gara. I live on Westfield Avenue, 677 Westfield Avenue. And I have two daughters in our school system. One is a high schooler, junior. She just got nominated or captain. She's going to be captain of the volleyball team next year, which we just found out tonight, and that was super exciting. And then I have my younger daughter who is a fifth grader at Tamaquez. I'm shifting the topic a little bit, and I'm not sure if that's allowed. I do want to say I think this is a fabulous conversation. This is my first meeting, so I wasn't sure how it works. And
I just want to say, if you're going to talk about the class, that's fine. But if you're going to talk about something else,
yes,
you have to wait till the end.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Hi, my name is Jay Berger. I live at 5 Carroll Road. First time in front of the board. I help run softball and baseball, so I'm usually in front of the rec committee, so it's different for me. But thank you for letting us use your fields. I appreciate it. I think this course is great. I think there are some great aspects of this course. I just don't think it goes far enough, and let me explain where I'm coming from. I think there are a lot of other religious and other minorities in our society that have gone through similar prejudices. For example, my family background, I'm Jewish. Okay, and when my grandmother came here back in 1915, she left persecution in Poland. My grandfather left persecution in Germany because Jews were persecuted based on their religion. They were absolutely considered not even human in most cultures in that time. When they came to the United States, they sought a better life, the American dream, etc., and it really wasn't handed to them. I grew up in New York City, and I was shocked to learn when I was a kid going up through the New York City public school system that back in the early 1900s and even up to like 1920, there were hotels and restaurants in New York and even in New Jersey that had signs that said, "No dogs, no Jews." Okay, so that was a shock to learn about that, because as a kid growing up as a baby boomer or whatever it's called, I just didn't feel that growing up in New York City. So what I would like to see, quite honestly, is this course expanded. This course to include other racial, other religious minorities. For example, Jews are only like 1.7% of our society here. And we've gone through these struggles. I mean, we've gone through places where, even in New York and in other places of the country, where Jews weren't allowed to get housing. People wouldn't rent houses to them because they were Jewish. They were part of different communities. When I first started my professional career, I found out, I was working as a lawyer in Los Angeles, that a country club was established in Los Angeles because Jews could not get into other country clubs, so they started their own. So I think if we expand this to other religious minorities like Jews, it really will give a well-rounded approach to all of our students. Because there are a lot of things that people, Jewish people and other religions, have gone through, the prejudices they've gone through by people in power in our society. So I think if we expanded the course, it would really give a well-rounded view. And without that expansion, I think it leaves out a certain portion of our society that we have to discuss. I mean, if we want to really talk about it, there were other colleges and universities that didn't allow Jews in. A friend of mine was one of the first Jews admitted into Harvard Law School because they just didn't allow them at the time. So I would implore upon you to expand this course. I think this course is great. I think it really reaches a lot of issues. But if you expand it to more issues regarding other minorities, we won't relive like Charlottesville again, where you have tiki torches and people saying Jews will not replace us. So we really need to think about this. I really would implore upon you to expand this course to make it more inclusive to other religions and other minorities. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just add to that, if I may. I'm going to read off of something I had prepared. As the course study document indicates, the course is based in the framework of critical race theory, which is, according to the study document, a legal approach that emerged out of the civil rights movement in order to identify and attack the inequalities faced by racial and ethnic minorities. When I first read through the document in our SIP committee meeting, I thought to myself, where are the Jewish people in this course? We have swastikas being drawn in our community and in our schools. If you Google it, you'll find 6 articles that will come right up in all the schools around here. Franklin, the high school, with swastikas. We're trying to combat racism, and we're omitting the Jews from the discussion. We cannot present critical race theory to our children without telling them that there's much more to the story. Critical race theory has been faulted for being anti-Semitic and anti-Asian American. I've said this multiple times to multiple people, and nobody's addressing it, nobody's acknowledging it, and nobody's validating it, yet it's published. So I really need you all to pay attention to that. I mean, the Jews are completely omitted from this, and the kids, if they're going to learn about critical race theory, they need to be told that other people don't agree with it and that it's been accused of being anti-Semitic. You can't omit that from this class. It's offensive to the Jewish community in town. I've been approached by multiple parents. So I needed to add that to that previous statement.
Hello, board and members of the community. My name is Tony Laporta. I live at 409 North Chestnut Street here in Westfield. I came here to speak out against this course as it currently stands. Let me tell you a little bit about something about myself. I grew up in Elizabeth and in Linden, New Jersey. I never felt myself white, someone who had white privilege. I was raised in a family that taught myself and anyone that came to our house that America stood for unity for all, and regardless of your race, your ethnicity, your religion, you're American first, and you're judged by yourself, by your own character, not by these other things. My grandfather, who, one of my grandfathers who came over from Italy, he thought Martin Luther King was the greatest man he ever heard of, okay? And he was not black. I'm going to read to you the definition of critical race theory that we heard much about today. This is from Britannica Encyclopedia. Critical race theory, CRT. The view that race, instead of being biologically grounded and natural, is socially constructed, and that race, as a socially constructed concept, functions as a means to maintain the interest of the white population that constructed it. According to CRT, racial inequality emerges from the social, economic, and legal differences that white people create between races to maintain elite white interests in labor markets, politics, and such create the circumstances that give rise to poverty and criminality in many minority communities. Though the intellectual origins of the movement go back much further, CRT movement officially organized itself July 1989. Now, I would be in favor of this course if it were expanded to include the entire American culture, starting with the Irish, not necessarily in this order. The Irish that came here, Irish need not apply. The Jewish population, the Poles, the Italians, everybody, the Greeks, everyone faced discrimination and had to fight through that. Some had it easier than others. Certainly, black people had it tough. American Indians had it tough. Japanese Americans were interned in World War II because they were Japanese. There was a war going on. So if this course were included and expansive into other areas, the way I see it and the way I read it, it's a white versus black, white privilege. And I think that's destructive to our community and to our students. We're here, the Board of Education is here to prepare these students for their life, to get into the best schools they can, and to understand the American experience and be part of that American experience. I think by driving a wedge between white and blacks is a terrible thing, and I think that's what this course really does. This theory, this critical race theory, is I think, destructive to America. Now, I have a paper here which I want to give to the board. It was produced by a young black student, Coleman Hughes, who's an undergraduate major of philosophy at Columbia University. He wrote this in 2018, so it's fairly current. He talks about critical race theory. I just want to read you the last paragraph. As these cracks widen, the far left responds by doubling down on the racial strain of black identity politics that caused these problems to begin with, and the far right responds with its own toxic strain of white identity politics. Stale grievances are dredged up from the history and used to justify double standards that create fresh grievances in turn. And beneath all of this lies the tacit claim that blacks are uniquely constrained by history in a way that Jewish Americans, East Indian Americans, East Asian Americans, Indian Americans, and countless other historically marginalized groups are not. In the midst of this breakdown in civil discourse, we must ask ourselves, academics, journalists, activists, politicians, and concerned citizens alike, if we are on a path towards a thriving multi-ethnic democracy or a balkanized hotbed of racial and political tribalism. So I'd like the board to have this paper, and I'd like you to look up this young college student from Columbia who's black and see what he has to say about this. Now, certainly he speaks for himself, but I think this is a side that needs to be taken into consideration when you are going to bring forth this type of class, which I think is harmful overall. And, you know, just to quote Martin Luther King, we have to judge each one by the content of their character, not by their skin. And I attend the Martin Luther King's celebrations that happen in Westfield. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I take a day off from work. I'm retired now, but I used to take a day off from work, vacation day, and Donnell Carr is a friend of mine. So I understand where the blacks are coming from. But it has to be expanded. What this course needs to do, it has to be expanded. If you don't expand it, then it's really doing a disservice to the town, to the taxpayers who are paying for it. And I'd like to know what the cost is. Is a new teacher going to be hired? If a new teacher is going to be hired with salary and benefits, that's got to be at least $100,000. And I think that needs to be brought to the public, what the cost of this is. So with that, I've said my piece, and I'd like to give this to the board, and if you could pass it around or perhaps make copies of it. But I would ask you not to hold this vote today until you read this paper and look up this young man and what he has to say. Thank you.
Let me just remind everybody if we could kind of stay to the 2 to 3 minute range, because there are a lot of people who want to speak, and I want to make sure we get through everybody this evening.
Good evening. My name is Diana Pepitone. I'm a resident at 200 North Chestnut Street. I guess I've been a resident for 17 years. And I came here tonight to really just listen to the topic, the introduction of this new curriculum, not intending to speak, so I don't really have any prepared statements. But from listening and from reading the content, scope, and sequence, I did just want to stand up and note a concern. And the concern has two elements. One is a concern about the reference in the content, scope, and sequence to critical race theory, which refers to it somewhat as an accepted theory. A theory, I think it's defined here as a legal approach that emerged out of the civil rights movement, quoted here from the paragraph on scope and sequence. And I would say that that's probably not an accurate portrayal. It's not a legal approach. It is a critique of our legal structure. And in fact, at core, it opposes the constitutional structure that we have in place and have had in place. So I wanted to note that and note the concern that this is really not just an introduction of some other legal theory, but in fact, it's taking at its core, it's based on the theoretical framework of a theory that opposes our constitutional structure. It is essentially in direct opposition to that, where it challenges our rights-based constitutional structure and instead it takes a view of a power-based theory. And it notes that it emerged out of the civil rights movement, but I would say it emerged apart from the civil rights movement. If we look at our civil rights movement and the MLK's statements and the movement that occurred in the 60s and the 70s, these were all based upon our constitutional structure, where we operated through law, through structure, the constitutional structure, the creed, as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are known. And instead, we see a movement that wants to remove these. They see these things, our American creed, as it's a critique of these conventional legal and scholarly norms, and they attempt to delegitimize them. And I'm not saying that these things don't have foundation in history as to true and real grievances, but I would like to note that that is in fact what critical race theory challenges. It challenges our constitutional structure. And so I would second the comments of past speakers to say it would be nice if this could be expanded so that the critical race theory is placed within the context of our constitutional structure, so that we can satisfy the Section 2240 mandate for showing all sides, so that when viewing critical race theory as a theory, which has many proponents, that the students themselves who may not be familiar with either our legal background in the constitutional order or critical race theory, that they are at least presented these so that they can see them in opposition to one another and in the totality, so that they can have an informed debate, so that they can look at it from both angles. So I would be a proponent for expanding this so that it is not restricted merely to the theoretical framework of critical race theory, but that it go beyond that to include our constitutional history and a look at the civil rights movement and how it worked through our constitutional structure instead of trying to overturn it. And thank you very much for the time.
Hi, my name is Marcy Kleinberg Banzelli. I live at 209 Tuttle Parkway. I have two children that graduated from Westfield High School. One child, my daughter, is in 8th grade, and I am really looking forward to her taking this class. And I'm excited about it. I look back at an incident at my house 3 years ago when my eldest daughter, who's now a senior in college, maybe it was 4 years ago, her two best friends picked her up. They both happened to be black 18-year-old men. And they went out to dinner, and all of a sudden I see a police car in my driveway with lights. And I see 2 police cars now in front of my house. And I come outside and I'm like, what's going on? And police are like, back off, back off. And I'm like, I'm not gonna back off. My daughter is involved in this. And I see both of my daughter's friends doing what they're supposed to be doing, putting their hands on the dashboard. And I see them ask my daughter to get out of the car. And I'm like, what is going on? After everything was said and done, there was no reason these kids were stopped. They were stopped because they were black and they were boys. And one of the things that really affected me was how affected my daughter was, because they kept asking my daughter, how are you? Are you okay? And she kept saying, I'm fine. Why do you keep asking me that? And right there is the white privilege that my white son, when he gets pulled over, does not have to put his hands on the dashboard. He does not have to be scared that he's going to get arrested for no reason. He doesn't have to be scared that he's going to be shot. I don't have to worry that 3 police cars are going to be in my driveway when my son pulls up in my driveway. So thank you for having this class, because we live in 2 different worlds and they're colliding, and we need to be educated about it. And my daughter would have really benefited from a class like this so she can really understand what it's like out there to be black in America. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brad Schaefer. I live at 614 Fairmont Avenue in Westfield, obviously. My issue with this course isn't that we're having a course like this. I think it's important, especially in a neighborhood that is 90% white, which apparently we've all chosen to move to, even though there's diversity all around, yet we preach diversity as our strength, so we might want to look at that. But with that being said, it's not the course idea or the concept. I think it's important. People who know me know that I'm a history buff. I'm a historian, I'm a Civil War buff. I've written a novel that takes place in Nazi Germany. I just finished one that takes place where the main character is a black detective in the 1930s in New York, and all he had to deal with. I based him off of a man named Samuel Battle, who was the first black New York policeman in the 1930s, a man who for 2 years the precinct wouldn't even speak to him, and he found his bunk in the basement. I based these stories on the first black doctor in the Harlem Hospital of all places in 1920 who had 4 white physicians resign over protest, and in fact the superintendent who orchestrated this was denigrated to the Bellevue Hospital Hall of Records. So I know very well the story of the black man. In fact, to compare the story of Mexicans crossing the border of a sovereign nation illegally to the plight of blacks who were taken in chains from Africa, brought over one of the most horrific passages you can possibly imagine, forced into a life of never-ending slavery, of rape, of torture, it's an abominable comparison. As Samuel Jackson said, it's not the same ballpark, it's not even the same sport. So please don't do that. There's been a lot of fallacies tonight that I've seen. Relativity is a theory that is used to slingshot satellites into orbit. It's not the same as a fashionable social theory that evolved in the 1980s. And what exactly is critical race theory? What is the actual definition of it? I'm going to just paraphrase it because you've heard different ones, but it basically says that every problem of minorities is caused by the white man. Now, you know what? That's true in a lot of ways. That's certainly true in the history of this country. Anybody who studied it can tell you, like I just gave you examples. But what this course doesn't do, this course will have you read books that are on the curriculum, but we'll also have you read books, let's say by Clarence Thomas, my grandfather's son, telling the story of a black man growing up in Georgia who faced the Klan, who actually faced the Ku Klux Klan and lynchings. He saw it firsthand. Do we hear books by Thomas Sowell, another conservative black man who has a different approach to the views of race? Now, what concerns me about this is that when people say it should be balanced, it should be balanced. We should learn about Nathan Bedford Forrest, the man who founded the Ku Klux Klan. He was a horrible man. We should learn about Alexander Stephens, who was the vice president of the Confederacy. We should learn about all these men, but we should also learn about men like William Wilberforce, who was an MP for Great Britain, who with the stroke of a pen basically emancipated 450 million people in the British Empire. He eradicated slavery in the 1800s. It was Abraham Lincoln, a white man, who ended slavery and basically paid for it with his life. 350,000 Union troops died to end the stain of slavery in this country. We need to tell their stories too. And finally, when we talk about the contemporary, we should talk about racism in this country. Anybody who's seen Ken Burns' Vietnam documentary, if you haven't, you should look at it because it shows just how bitter and divided we were. But I'd like to think we've come a long way from that. I certainly hope so. And if we haven't, then we should be discussing it. But if we're going to discuss disparities in race, we should also discuss the role of family in what happens to all minorities. We should ask ourselves why it is that only 4% of black families with two-parent households live below the poverty line, whereas 30% of white households with single-parent families live below the poverty line. We should also read Daniel Patrick Moynihan's 1965 study that raised the alarm of African American illegitimacy reaching 20%. Now, Daniel Patrick Moynihan was a Harvard sociologist, liberal professor. He was not a right-wing maniac.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
I have to...
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I apologize. Point being, just get the history right. And get it complete. That's all I ask. And then this course would be fantastic, and I'd be happy for my child to take it.
Good evening. Lisa Donovan O'Dwyer, 20 South Wickham Drive. By the name, I'm Irish. My parents were first generation, born in 1910 and 1916, and the only issues we had was that my lace curtain Irish grandmother didn't want my father to marry my shanty Irish mother, so I think the Irish are doing okay. As far as this course being race specific to African American, I would like to give you an experience that I had in 8th grade. We were offered an intensive course on the Holocaust, complete course on the Holocaust, because at the time there was a mini-series on the Holocaust. The intensity of that and learning about one group of people, me having no Jewish background at all, I've done my DNA, and was a lifelong dream of mine and a lifelong passion for learning about the Jewish people. Because that intense course on one issue, and that's why I agree with this course. First of all, it's an evolution, I believe, of the African American study, and being specific to African Americans who were brought here in chains is going to leave a lifelong impression, especially on children like mine who graduated. Unfortunately, I wish they had had this course. They graduated in 2015 and 2017 from Westfield High School. And it was such an intense, lifelong study for me that this past March, I spent a week on my own in Krakow and revisited all the places I had read about and all the things I had learned about in the intense Holocaust study program in Mr. Marshall's 8th grade Holocaust study program in Binghamton, New York. And anyway, that's all I have to say. I really agree with this program, and I hope that it goes through. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Thompson. I live at 614 West Broad Street. I graduated from Westfield High School in '09. My mom graduated from Westfield High School. My uncles graduated from Westfield High School. We've been in Westfield for a while. I didn't really prepare anything because I wasn't going to say anything. I more so wanted to kind of watch and see, you know, get a feel of what was going on. And I'm actually can say I'm upset that I even have to be here to defend the fact that this class is necessary in a town that is majority white. I hear a lot of the word theory being thrown around, but in reality, that is my reality, this theory that, you know, people tend to talk about. I was pulled over in front of my house in Westfield to make sure that I wasn't robbing it. And then when I had said, well, no, I lived there, they made jokes about the Saturn that I had. The first time I was called the N-word was on McKinley Playground. And I remember because I didn't know how to feel about it at the time. Like, you know, I'm in 5th grade, I'm 10. I knew it was a bad word, but I didn't know the context of it. When we're taught American history, it doesn't go this deep. American history is painful and uncomfortable for minorities, just like this course may be painful and uncomfortable for majority families. I understand. I didn't have the choice to say, you know what, I don't want to take American history because slavery is painful for me. I didn't have that choice. In order to know my DNA, I have to spit in a little tube and send it to Ancestry.com. I'm excited for this course. Very excited for this course because I feel like it gives children who live in our bubble of Westfield, because I lived in the bubble and it was popped the moment I left. I feel as though it gives children, especially majority children that live in this bubble of Westfield, the opportunity to take a look outside of themselves, to take a walk into someone else's shoes, to understand why minorities may act a certain way, may think a certain way. It's difficult for me to be up here because this is a town that I love. Like I said, I grew up in Westfield. My mom grew up in Westfield. I came back to Westfield. My daughter's now in Westfield. But the reality is that our children in Westfield, especially our majority of children in Westfield, need this course. And from what I saw, this course didn't only focus on African Americans. It touched Native Americans. It touched Asian Americans. It touched Indian Americans. So I'm out of breath because I'm stressed. So to say the least, like I said, I'm excited. I hope that you guys take it in consideration. I do agree that not necessarily that the course needs to be expanded, but if you want to have a course that focuses on the persecution of those from different religions, to have a course that focuses on persecution of those of different religions. We can focus on the Jewish religion, the Christian religion. We can have a course for that. But to cram everything into the race course because it makes you feel uncomfortable and it's unfair. History has been unfair to minorities for a really long time. I don't know if you guys know that or not. And then as far as it comes down to the African American family, the reason why majority of the time the African American family it is the way it is today as far as being in a single family household is because slavery taught African American women that we didn't need a man because you ripped the men from us, you threw them in the field, and you forced us to raise our children if you didn't take those from us too. So if you're going to talk about the African American family and the plight that we're going through, currently, the least that you can do is make sure that you take into consideration slavery and the impact that slavery has on our community to this day. That's it. I love y'all.
Tough act to follow. My name is Claudia Cohen. I live at 615 Mountain Ave. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I spoke at the last meeting, and I was here to listen and support others. But I'm struck by two things that I wanted to point to, and the previous speaker did some of it beautifully. One assumption that I'm hearing is that if we teach this course, that excludes the possibility of teaching other courses that would address, as she noted, possibly religious minorities. I'm going to stop for a moment to ask a question, if I might. Is there a Holocaust Studies course at Westfield High?
There are courses all the way through from elementary to high school, middle school to high school. They're not separate courses, but it's infused into both literature and history, and I'm forgetting another area. So there is a program of studies, but it's not one course at any one level.
Okay. I'd understood that there was a requirement that the Holocaust be studied, if I understand that correctly.
There is, and so that's how we infuse it throughout the grades.
So one of the assumptions I wanted to sort of lift up and challenge, I guess, is that of well, there's not enough. You know, this one course and everything we want to accomplish needs to be in this one course. Why can't there be other courses, right? If there's a hunger for the experiences, you know, and I didn't hear anyone saying that this course will say that no white folks have ever experienced oppression. That's not the point. It's not an either or. It's having the courage to look at some egregious structural aspects of our country and make our country better. The other assumption that I'm hearing, and it really saddens me, is that a course like this is going to set white and black people against each other. No, that is not the point. When in critical race theory, I'm not going to do a definition or reference any scholars, but in my experience of it, what we're talking about when we talk about oppression, we're talking about a structure and a history that's gone on for hundreds of years that we don't see because we live within it and we're all affected by it. So it's not about current white people being the bad guys who are necessarily oppressing black people. It's about structural inequities that if we can see them, we can do something about them. So I see this course as almost a microscope to try and help many of us, some who've lived being a minority and others who have witnessed it but not lived it, to grapple with what it means and how we can acknowledge our past and come together, not be separated, not be set one against together, but to be able to be a stronger America together.
Hi, I'm losing my voice, sorry. My name is Randy Warnes. I'm at 760 Boulevard. You hear me now? Okay. Randy Warnes, 760 Boulevard. So before the board enters a final vote on this course, I decided to come back in. I've spoken at the last board meeting and at the board meeting prior on a different matter. The only 3 board meetings I've ever attended. So one of the things that struck me from the last board meeting that I think needs to be said, and actually was doubled down on in this board meeting, is that the board members, it's not the responsibility of board members to read through the coursework in any level of depth, that it's best to leave it to the experts. I couldn't possibly disagree with that more. It is the highest and most sacred responsibility of the board to look at what is being taught to the children. You can get a panel of experts to do the finances and everything else. It's the education of the children that's primary all the time. There was also a comment made at the last board meeting that that the concern I had raised about the psychological well-being of the kids after they take this course is a concern, particularly because the underlying coursework divides our citizenry into different camps, into different groups. And if you're in a group that is considered an oppressor, how does that feel? You know, 12-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid, 14-year-old kid, 17 or 18-year-old kid. Is that what we're here to teach? Or are we here to teach that we're all individual human beings that have value, right? They're all different. Every single one of us are different. We all have our own hopes and dreams. This puts us into groups, right? Critical race theory says that you have to look at everything through the lens of race. I do not, and I will not, ever look through things through the lens of race. I thought it was very unusual that the Martin Luther King Jr. Society would endorse a class like this, considering that, in fact, there's a professor, Robin DiAngelo, which apparently is one of the leading voices for critical race theory. And she said that it's dangerous to see people as individuals rather than by skin color, because all white people are inherently racist no matter what. You can't treat everyone as equals. That's not what Martin Luther King said in his I Have a Dream speech, which everyone rightly reveres because of what he said and what he stood for, and in the circumstances and courage that it took for him to do what he did. This just sort of goes in the opposite direction. And I just really have a hard time understanding why would we want to teach that to our kids. This is not about teaching the full, unvarnished history of our country from every different point of view. The problem I have is this critical race theory. It's poison, and I would argue that it's Marxist. Why do I think it's Marxist? Because Karl Marx, sorry, I'm trying to skip around here so I don't take too much time. So Karl Marx, his view on power and structure is that there's a constant battle between different groups, power groups. And in his day, it was the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, right? The capitalists and the working class. Well, we're doing the same thing in this class. I don't see how this unites us as a country, unites us as a people. There's so many things we can rally around, so many things that we have in common with each other. That doesn't mean you forget about evil things that were done in the past. Absolutely not. Critical race theory. It's some bad stuff, folks. And I'm really having a hard time understanding why everyone's talking about it from the standpoint of, I have this story and that story. In my experience, I get it. And I empathize with it. And it's difficult. And standing up here is not easy. I can tell you that. But the problem is that we can talk about those things without dividing people. The discussion about those things is to bring people together. I'm very, very opposed to this. I can't say it strongly enough.
Hi, my name is Anna Chung, and I'm a junior at Westfield High School. So I think that this class will be very beneficial towards the student body, mainly because as a student of WHS, I can rightfully say that my high school does not acknowledge hate towards minority groups as well as they should. And to give an example, there was an assembly a couple of weeks ago on hate crimes. The first thing that the speaker told my group of juniors and seniors was that he didn't think that WHS was a place of hate. Furthermore, the only thing our school did to acknowledge the impact of this assembly was to make students sign an optional pledge that vaguely made students agree to not commit hate crimes. This is an absolutely unacceptable method to address racism, especially in modern society. Furthermore, I would like to add that the history of minorities cannot be sugarcoated. There is no other positive viewpoint that can take regarding white supremacy, especially the history of white supremacy. The history of racism in America is not a partisan issue. This will not create a divide among the races at WHS. Rather, it will educate both white and minority students about different perspectives. This multitude of information and the voice that this course will provide to the underrepresented students at my high school shows the importance that the impact that this course will bring. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Esposito. The gentleman that talked earlier couldn't emphasize it further that it is tough to get up here, so just bear with me for a second. I wrote some notes. I just want to start by saying I think by having a course that discusses minorities and their struggles is important. As a minority myself, being Hispanic and Italian, I think it's important to talk about diversity and the struggles we all have faced. I also think we need to carefully approach how the subject, how we learn about the subject, considering how sensitive the topic can be. The title of the course itself is divisive, in my opinion, and very left-leaning. I feel like introducing books like White Privilege and White Rage isolates students further and will negatively influence our young minds. The kind of material suggests being white is bad and privileged when that could be further from the truth. I have 4 biracial children who are currently in or will be in the Westfield school system, and the current outline of this course will further divide our community. So I would ask that we, consider holding off on the course itself until we can really, get it complete. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vanita Claiborne. I live in Westfield at 615 Sterling Place. I have a question for the board. Is this course a credit course? Is this going to be a mandatory course for children? It's going to be elective?
It's a half-year elective course.
A half-year elective?
Yes.
And it's just to focus on the hate crimes of African Americans?
No, it focuses on the races, as races are now defined in the United States. So that would include African Americans, it includes American Indians, it includes Asian Americans, it includes the races as defined by the U.S. government at this point.
And who's going to benefit from this course? How are the children going to benefit from knowing about the hate that they already see?
See, I think it's more than that. I think it is, somebody described it as learning to look through someone else's eyes. I think that's what it is. I think it is trying, it has to be, as some people have mentioned, it has to be done in a class with a culture where people can feel comfortable and not fear to say what they think, to ask questions, so that we start to learn what is it like to learn through the eyes of others. That's a simplistic version of what I think it comes to be. That people's realities are different, and we'll never learn that if we don't talk to each other, if we don't listen to each other, if we don't read what is written by people who may be different than we are.
Okay, no, I believe this is a good course because when I went to school in Westfield High School, they had Black history, and I believe it was mandatory then. And I grew up with mixed friends. We don't have what's going on in the high school right now, where kids are being called names, especially after they watched that, as that young lady spoke, that last film that the Middlesex County cops showed them, and using the N-words and the derogatory words toward the children. So I think you need to reach out to the children to find out exactly what's going on in the high school, because racism is very high right now in that school. I have grandchildren in that school. I have a young lady that's going to be going there in 10 years. I don't want her to have to go through this. I don't understand why everybody's saying this religion, that religion. I understand they want their voices heard of what they're suffered, their heritage, but we were brought here. We weren't asked to be here. They were here because they chose to come here. There's a difference between being brought and forced to do things that you didn't want to do. And my other comment was to the young man about families that are broken, African American families. Well, I lost my husband when my children were very young. So as a single mother, I did what I had to do. And I stayed in Westfield, and they survived. They graduated. So before you talk about parents and how people are raising their children, especially African Americans, you need to find out why the other parent is not there. I don't know who, I don't remember your name. But I'm just like, she said not to talk to the people.
All comments should come to us.
So I think this is a good course.
Wait. No comments from the community, please.
I think this is a good course. I think it needs to be implemented sooner than later because of what I see that goes on in the high school, what the children have told me that goes on in the high school before things do get out of control. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nick Esposito. I live at 234 Gulf Edge Drive. I'm an Italian-Irish American from Brooklyn. I believe this course is left political leaning and does not reflect the real values of America. Italian, Irish, Jewish immigrants, as well as other ethnic groups coming to America were oppressed in the past. But this course does not reflect their struggle and their point of view. I don't believe white supremacy runs this country, nor I don't believe it holds sway over our society. Racism does exist on all sides and should be addressed. Teaching about border wall has nothing to do with ethnic struggle. When I went to school, we learned about African American struggles, Native American struggles, Asian struggles. You can't fight racism with racism, just like you can't fight sexism with sexism. I don't believe in white privilege. I grew up white, poor, inner city kid. I was harassed by police. We had racial fights in school, but we still respected each other more now than ever. I see dividing as I don't see unifying. I see people blaming whites in the past for what's happening now. When most white people in this country weren't here when slavery was brought here. Most white people in the country came after slavery. So you want to blame white people now for every struggle, to me, is not right. And there's millions of white people that are struggling, that's trying to survive, whether they be from Greek, Polish, like that young gentleman said. I grew up in a broken home, drug addict mother, single mother. I've been on my own since I'm 16. Everything I got, I worked hard for, and I came and moved to Westfield to give my kids a better life. Not to say they're white privileged or they're this or that, because I'm not from white privilege. I struggled all my life. So how now I'm teaching my kids not to work hard, not to this, because why? They just got everything handed them because they're white? I don't believe in that, and I don't believe in fighting racism with racism. A woman said that she saw, her daughter was her friends when they get pulled over, and that's white privilege. I'm an inner city white kid. I got pulled over all the time. I got harassed by cops. When I first moved out here, I got pulled over all the time by cops. Maybe because they didn't know who I was, maybe I didn't fit in with the norm of the community. Not saying that it's right. I'm saying it happens everywhere, more than you think. And I think people maybe that were born and raised here don't understand everybody else's point of view and struggle. If you go to a black community that's 95% black, are white people saying this community is not diverse enough? No, you don't say that. Just like now I hear this community isn't diverse enough. I don't understand that. People move wherever they want, they raise wherever they want, and we can't say, well, this community is only this and they're wrong for it. You have the option to move here, you have the option to live here. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
My name is Mary Withers, and I live at 205 Kakiola Place in Westfield. I have sat here and listened to both sides of this story. I'm 80 years old, and I have lived through the segregation era. I think that this course would be good for the young people in Westfield, because I have sent 4 kids through the Westfield school system, one grandson who now is an engineer in California, graduated from NJIT. I think the Westfield school system is a wonderful school system, but it has its faults. I think that some of these things have to be corrected for this course to be successful. The part of it, I think the kids have to be trained that are going to take this course, because it's going to be impacting on them very seriously because of the type of course that it is. I think that another thing, the person that's going to teach this course has to be a very liberal person and be knowledgeable of both sides of the kids that are being able to take this course. I think that all of these things have to be considered before you put this course in place. I think it's a wonderful course. I think with the diversity in our community and us blacks being a minority, I think it's like 2%. I think that I don't know how many black kids will be in this class, and will it be traumatic for them, and will it be open enough for the kids to understand the plight that most African Americans have been through. Thank you.
Had to come from work. Good evening. I'm Pamela Brook, 775 Carlton Road. I've been basically a lifelong resident of Westfield, and I have sent my children through the school system. I wasn't planning to speak, so of course I didn't prepare any notes, but just some comments. I think this course would be very good for the majority students in understanding the plights of other races that exist in this country. Since this is a course that came about from the African American Studies course, I don't see a problem in this having only to do with racial minorities in this country. I understand that Holocaust is woven through. If there is a desire to have a course that just deals with the Holocaust or religious minorities in this country, I think that should be done. I don't see that this course should be stopping that from occurring. There's also LGBTQ. I mean, you know, issues that should be addressed, because there are quite a few students that in the Westfield school system that are being harassed because of their sexual orientation. So I think there's a lot that can happen. In my opinion, this course should be mandatory. But this is a first step. I think that it is almost a cop-out to want to use process as to say that this course should not take place. I also think it's a cop-out to say that this course should not take place because it doesn't include religious minorities or anyone else that could be subjected to injustices in the United States in 2019. The other problem is now it is the point of the Board of Ed to come and read all the books that all children are subjected to. We've now 50 years in Westfield, and no one has ever asked, well, how do you feel as an African American for the books you had to read and sit through? Or how did your kids feel about the books that they had to sit through? But now it is because we are seeing the United States in the eyes of African Americans, now we have to say, this is incorrect. I think it's a cop-out. We cannot continue to leave our children, and I mean all children, without the knowledge of each other. I was taught one side of history. The only reason I have a very good grasp of my own history is because of my parents, not the school system. Most children learn history through the school system. It was not taught to me, my own history. So therefore, I think it's a cop-out to say that basically, we need to have our children to understand the world at large. This country will be a brown and black country when we're dead and gone. We are going to leave our children without the tools then to be able to interact, to understand, and to be successful in that type of society. There is white privilege all around us. I could go on for days, and I won't. I'm getting off. All around us. It has nothing to do with your socioeconomic class. It has to do when you and I walk into somewhere, how we're treated based just on our color. And it's different. Now, and the other thing is that I think that the next generation is much more mature than it seems the adults are. And I think that they will be able to deal with this course, and not 12 and 13 years. As far as I know, juniors and seniors are 17 and 18-year-olds, minimum 16-year-old. Their maturity level is much higher. Their acceptance of differences and their plight will be higher. And their emotional well-being, I think they can handle it. I think that, well, you know, I'm just going to be simple. Our kids had to handle being in a majority school, and no one ever said, well, how are our children handling what's going on in the Westfield school system throughout their throughout their school, but especially through the 4 years of high school. They went on, they graduated, they went to college, they're successful in their different professions. But no one questioned their own well-being. No, because they're mature at that point to understand that this is the world that they live in. Okay, and my last thing is that till we start to be able to discuss racism openly and come to grips with the racism that exists, not only for African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Americans, till we come to grips with that, we will not be able to be the country we strive all to be. And to say that this, I have to say this, to say that this critical theory basically states that black people want to get rid of the Constitution is a fallacy. There is not, I don't know of one person here that is a friend of mine who's African American who's ever said they want to get rid of the Constitution. What they want is for us to live up to the Constitution. That's what we want.
I just need to respond to two things that were said. I have to respond.
Tara, it's really,
I have to respond
but
to two things that were said.
You have to wait. We're in the community section, and at the end, I'll give all board members the opportunity. That's fine. You can bring back the statement and discuss it after the community is finished.
Hi, my name is Amisha Mehta. I live at 41 Carroll Road. I'll warn you that I'm not as eloquent as my daughter, so just a couple of things that I wanted to address. One, on this issue that the board has to have read all of the books. I just wanted to ask, does the board do all the calculus problems in the AP BC Calc curriculum as well? I'm curious as to like how in-depth we go or where we leave it to the experts, if we let the math teachers be the experts, if we let the social studies teachers be the experts. Secondly, on this issue of the Constitution, The framers themselves didn't believe that the Constitution was a perfect document. That's why we have a process to have amendments. That's why we had the Bill of Rights right away, and that's why we have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. So there is no overthrowing the government. When we have an amendment, we don't overthrow the government. It is because we live in a democracy, and there is a process by which we can make our society more perfect. So that, I just didn't really understand that. And the most important thing that I think has been left out of this conversation is that this is an elective class. Nobody is forced to take this. What you are forced to take is U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 2, in which we address all of U.S. history. So all of this conversation about why aren't we addressing these people and those people, all of those things are addressed. The things that don't really get addressed in U.S. history are the things that are in this class. It is your choice to take this class. Nobody is forcing you to do it. It is also a semester-long class. So I'm not sure how we think we're going to pack all of this information into a semester-long class. Our kids already do a lot of homework. I don't think we can ask them to read even more, right? So there's a lot that is being done in this class. And if we want to add other classes, I think that's great. I think having more conversation and being more diverse would be a wonderful thing. But I'm not really sure why, when we're talking about race, that means that we're denying any other experience. I also want to point out that everybody that's complained about this class and said that white privilege doesn't exist is white, and we are addressing a fully white board, right? And so no offense to the board, but like to say that privilege doesn't exist when there is not a single person of color on the board. I am the president of the PTC, and I'm not speaking here to represent those views, but I'm fairly confident that I'm the first person of color to hold that role. So I don't think that we can say that privilege doesn't exist. Right, so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for having this class. I think it's wonderful, and I look forward to my children being able to take it.
There we go. Rob Bonaccio, 528 Forest Avenue here in Westfield. We've sort of shifted focus in the discussion back to what the board's responsibilities are and aren't as far as what course materials they should and should not read. And I wasn't going to touch that. I thought we were through it, but I feel like I should now. I don't think a failure to review past materials negates a willingness and a necessity for the board to review materials going forward, particularly on subjects as sensitive as this. If you've chosen not to read things in the past and review things in the past, that's hardly an excuse not to do so going forward. Frankly, that's what I elect you for. I elect you to look at everything. I elect you to make sure that the things that are being produced by your experts, frankly, even the budget, right? You all looked at it. You all made sure that the experts did what they were supposed to do. And I count on you as fellow parents and fellow citizens of Westfield to look at those things. And I hope going forward, you will choose to do that, because I do think it's part of your responsibilities, is to look at these courses, especially ones that are of such a sensitive and important nature. I think you should. And the fact that you haven't in the past doesn't make folks raising concerns here any less adequate. And frankly, if folks have had concerns about Westfield schools in the past, I wish you would have come up and said something. I wish we could have set things in a direction that's different by coming up and speaking up when the opportunity is there. And I hope this discussion will lead people to be more forthcoming and feel more comfortable doing that, because I think we should. And if we're not doing that, if we're not having those discussions as a community, then I don't know what we're doing. These are about our kids. This is about our future. It's about our community. If you're not going to stand up when you feel like you have to, then I don't know what to do. I wasn't sure I was going to stand up today, and I would have been quite the hypocrite if I'd sat there, when I had this sitting here in my heart. That's for sure. As far as the course goes, I think Ms. Wolf, I don't know if she's still here. I think you are. I thought she made a great point about trying to analogize this to other courses. I went to a high school that was all Christian, and the student body of my school was hardly just that. And our religion courses in our sophomore year shifted from just teaching the basics to teaching about other religions, teaching about the religions in the faith. The kids who were sitting next to me, who I'm still friends with 25, 30 years later. They also taught me to question the actual Christian faith that I was supposedly there to learn under, which was kind of funny and kind of irked a lot of parents, because they said, why in the world did I send you to Catholic school if you're going to come out and ask, why in the world should I believe in Catholicism anymore, right? So that challenged us. And I will say it sent some kids to a point where they weren't, maybe they left the faith or did whatever it was, but our kids can handle it. They can handle the challenges. And I like that we have a policy that says we're going to have challenging courses, but we're going to present them in a balanced manner. Because where I think this course is failing is that the discussion that we've had here has been truly interesting. It's been truly fantastic. And I don't think it could happen in this course as constructed. in the course is constructed, it does not meet the aspirations of its mission statement. It doesn't meet the aspirations of the folks here who see it as so essential, because we're focusing the course on a single theory, on a single perspective. We're forcing us to look at these issues through a single prism, and that is the problem. Had I been required to look at religion through a single prism, I would not have been a good thinker. I would have been told what to think, not how to think. And that's the negative of this course. And I think in our rush to do something that needs to be done, we shouldn't just do anything. We've got to do the right thing. I have to agree with Ms. Withers. You know, the content requires a lot of training and preparation. It requires faculty members and teachers who are well trained in this. None of them are here. None of them have come to talk to us about the course, and I do appreciate Dr. Dolan giving us the summary that was there. But this is just important. The issue is too important. The sensitivity is too important for us to look at it through a single prism. When even folks here have admitted, well, we're debating critical race theory. It says this about the Constitution. It doesn't say this about the Constitution. What a great discussion. We can't have it in our class. This class isn't set up for that, and it should be. It absolutely should be. I don't disagree. I don't agree with critical race theory at all. I think it's a fallacy. But you know what? I want my kid to learn it. I want my kid to learn that theory. I want all three of them. I want all three of my kids to learn that theory. And I want them to look at that theory and say, you know what? I can accept it based on the perspective of other theories that criticize it, that support it, that are going to be presented to them. We're on a great road, but we're not there yet. And I'd encourage us to be thoughtful about the course, because the subject matter is far, far too important for us to just try to do something to get it done when we can take those extra steps, when we can listen to the comments here, and we can make sure that the course provides our kids the opportunity to hear the discussion that we have heard here today, which I just don't see happening in the course as constructed. I think we've done a great effort. I think we've done our best, but with a little bit more work, we can do even better, and we do it right by our students.
Hello, I'm Alexis, 127 Grove Street. I also was not planning to speak, but hearing all the comments made me get out of my seat. So, for some people, living here in the US has been a dream to amass wealth and social mobility. For others, it's a nightmare of daily injustice and constant pain and discomfort. Their perspective on USA and the history should be heard as well. Right now, the education is one-sided, and it's not about both sides because there are more than two sides. There is a spectrum of perspectives that come from different vantage points, usually related to power. I want to echo that this course is an elective, so only students who want to take it will. Students should have some say in what they want to learn. The fact that we're having this conversation means we need this course. The comments I've heard about individualism, I'm white and I've been pulled over by the cops, about inclusion, expansion, not seeing white privilege, is exactly why we need this course. Talking about the aspirations, this course not meeting the aspirations of those who support it, I would differ or disagree, because I haven't heard one person of color say that this course was not good. So that to me says something. So now the question on my heart is how to reach white people who mean well, but just don't get it and don't know that they don't get it. How to get this course available for the town of Westfield. That's where it's needed now. Because racism is not a minority problem. If it was, it's a problem for minorities, but it's not a problem of minorities, right? I mean, because racism doesn't work for me, and I don't think it works for any person of color. We would have been done with it a long time ago if we could solve it. So it's together that we need to solve racism, which means white people, people of color, together. And that's what this course, if we can't see it, I think James Baldwin said, what is the quote? If we can't face it, Right. Basically, if we can't see it, we can't face it, right? So we need to learn how to see it so that we can face it together. Thank you.
Hi, Liz Mulholland, 1029 Harney Street. Uh-oh. I don't know. You good? Did I see that? Okay. Sorry, thank you, sorry. I wanted to congratulate the board members who recently ran for re-election. Congratulations, and thank you for your service. I really appreciate the time that you served on here. I wanted to speak about the class as well. Just basic questions. Do you know approximately, does anybody know how many high school courses we offer in high school, roughly?
I believe it's 170.
It's 170. I have never seen anything like this. There's 170 courses. And we're standing here today having a discussion about a course that is voluntary, that children have to actually choose to take. And I'm hearing basically that educating somebody on a specific course, this one specific course out of 170 courses, is a problem. And I am astounded because I am a true believer in education and knowing research. It is so important. Our policies in government create our lifestyles. They impact everybody in this country. And if we are afraid to teach students, I don't care if we disagree or agree with the policy, if we can't even have that discussion, what are we saying? I mean, honestly, you have to educate the public in all arenas, all the time. And you may not agree with something, then you don't have to take the class. And parents, if you don't agree with it, then you don't have to have your child take the class. But to take that opportunity away from all of the other children, the other 2,000 students in that class, because a very few group of people are afraid of what it might say, message it might give, I don't even know what to say to that. I don't. I mean, I am embarrassed that we're standing here having this discussion. I fully support this. I fully support, I don't care what studies you want to put in. If there's going to be facts put out there, I want it read. If there's going to be information, a different perspective, I want my kid to have access to that, because that's how we're going to continue to improve our country, and that's how our policies are going to continue to make life better for everybody. Okay, and there are still policies that are created now that we're not looking at, and these kinds of classes are going to get to the nuts and bolts of why we have the policies we have, and that is so vitally important. So I want to thank you, the board, for taking your time and hearing all of us, because you've been so good through the, 50 of us that have been here. But thank you so much, and thank you to the public, everybody, for participating.
How you doing? I'm George Claiborne. I live on 122 Kakiola Place. I've basically lived in Westfield my whole entire life. I grew up around many different people, but Westfield, it's like people try to dress it up like something it ain't. And it's a perfect place. And, I was told when I was a kid, oh, college isn't for you, which I didn't have plans on going to college. I wanted to be a truck driver, and that's what I did. But now, here it is, 2000, whatever, my kids are now going to Westfield, and they're being told the same thing. And many African-American kids in Westfield are told that you're not built for college. Y'all don't even do nothing for Black history. Because I've asked my kids the last couple of years, what did y'all learn for Black history? So I sat them down and talked to them about stuff. Martin Luther King, not even celebrated. So, I understand what y'all trying to do, but what y'all need to do is work on teaching the facts first, and then do that. That's all I got to say.
Good evening. My name is Aisha Qualis. I reside at 312 Livingston Street. I spoke at the last meeting, and I am a 1995 Westfield High School graduate. I lived here all my life. I just have a quick question because I know it's after 10 o'clock. When I posted the article about the last meeting on my Facebook page, and I mentioned how I attended the African history class, a few of my high school friends said they did not even know there was an elective for African American history, or they would have taken it. So my question is, how is this course going to be rolled out so that enough students are aware of this course?
Well, generally speaking, it's because it's part of the course of studies, right, that everyone receives. And then it may be the same or not as when you went to Westfield High School, I'm not sure. But then the students will meet with the counselors, and after speaking with their parents and talking about what courses they're going to take. I'm not sure if they're, actually, I take that back. When we have a new course, I just remembered, the counseling department meets to talk about the new courses, and so that they're aware of it and make sure that that students are aware that we have a new course. So that's part of it. They talk about any course that's been changed or any course that's different and highlight that. And I think what they do is they have the people who help develop the course come to meet with the counseling department so that they can have a better sense of it.
Okay, so the guidance counselors will have a better sense of the course, and how would the guidance counselor then present it to the students? I think, to me, that's the disconnect, because a lot of my friends said their guidance counselor never even mentioned it. And I understand that they are, as a kid, I remember giving the courses, but you're not reading. How many courses you said there were?
Right,
107.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might not have read all of them, yeah. Exactly.
Right. So I would say just look into, if it is passed tonight, look into how we can make sure that a majority of the students are aware of this course. That's all. That's my last comment.
Okay, seeing nobody else come forward to the podium, I just want to take 1 minute to address one gentleman's point that he brought up in reference to us rushing into something. I think Gretchen mentioned, sorry, you can go. That's okay. At the beginning of our discussion that we have been working on this class since 2018. It's not rushing. We're not rushing tonight to vote on something. It's not something that was decided last month. This comes after a lot of work through our teachers and our administrators and so forth, and very thoughtful work to put a class that's challenging for our students and will benefit the students who take it. Do I think this class is right for everybody? Maybe, maybe not. But right now it's an elective class, and I do think that the hard work that the teachers and the administrators have put in over the past 18 plus months and done their due diligence is not something that we're rushing into this evening. So I will move to have the board vote on this, but I will allow the board to, if they have any last comments that they'd like to make before we go ahead and vote on this class, we can take a couple minutes to do that. Okay. Oh. Yeah, I don't think this one goes that far, Brenna.
We'll try it. No. No, it's got to be that one.
Thank you. I just want to close my comments with saying this course has a deliberately narrow focus, as several people have brought up. And I'm going to quote from the curriculum document. The focus is to understand the barriers encountered by people of ethnic minorities and how those barriers were created and have changed America. Instead of expanding this out and covering every possible person that was ever disadvantaged in this country, let's look at possibly creating a course for the immigrant experience and do a wholesale look at how groups of people, when they were when groups of immigrants came to this country from whether it's Ireland or Poland or Italy or Africa, Asia, how they were treated when they came here in that time period, and how they've since overcome those barriers. And if I might add, if the course had a different title, most of us, board members included, probably wouldn't have read past the title page to look at all these details. This is by far the longest discussion we've ever had on a course in my 7 years on the board. Thank you.
I just first want to thank everyone for coming out. I think regardless of where you stand on this course, just the concern that we have for our children and the courses in Westfield in general is just really admirable. Last meeting, I had abstained from the course, and I intentionally did that because I wanted to do additional research. Because of a family matter, I couldn't do as much I had liked. And just want to give you a little bit of background about what I've done over the past couple of weeks, just to get a better understanding of the course and the materials. First, I reviewed the materials, including reading the summaries of the books and associated reviews. Did I read all the books? Absolutely not. I just did what I was able to access through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and so on. Reviewed numerous online articles on the subject from any perspective, essentially put in various keywords and looked at Google and see wherever it took me. I didn't necessarily look at the source. I was looking at just material in general. I spoke with members of the community who reached out to me. I had a number of people reach out to me to ask about the course, and both for the course and against the course, and people who had mixed opinions on the course. I spoke with my own children who are both juniors at Westfield High School and what they thought about the course. I also rewatched the whole video from our meeting this past 3 weeks ago that we had. And finally, I also looked at the various policy documents. When I watched the videos over the past few days, over the past few days, there were two people that in particular spoke out. And one of them, and I just want to quote a couple of the statements that were said during the meeting. One was by Mira Mehta, where we need to be educated on all views of society so that we can have appropriate discussion on it is not to understand or biased or hateful, but that we can actually create meaningful solutions. And the second one, quote, was just from a gentleman who spoke, and he spoke a number of facts. It was Mr. Carr. Fact, the purpose of school is education. Is to educate. I'm sorry, my page went, oh, I know why, it's on the back. Sorry. Fact, education overcomes, if allowed, ignorance is one of the things that prevails in every place, and every country is ignorant, and in every country is ignorance. The lack of being informed, the lack of operating without all the facts. Fact, our society is fraying at the edges and is in danger of falling apart because of imbalance and lack of civility. And finally, he stated, we could change society with the process of education. So when I had thought about contacting a couple of the media sites and said, I didn't want to put an article out there. So after the meeting, I heard all the comments, I read all the postings on social media, but I decided it'd be better to just discuss it in person versus just having a message out there. As a community, I would hope, this is one of the paragraphs from the meeting, from my letter. As a community, I would hope people would not be naive in that racism does not exist. However, we cannot make progress if we do not have the discussion in a respectful manner. The lack of civility I've seen on social media between neighbors having differing opinions or approaches does not help us as a community work toward racial equality and improving achievement for all students. I don't think there's anyone in this room that could disagree on this that would disagree with that this course should not exist. I do agree. I'm adding something I didn't write down though, because I heard comments about let's talk about the Poles or let's talk about the Italians or the Irish. I think it's important to discuss those subjects. However, I think that's a separate course. I had a similar comment as Brendan, where if we want to have a course on immigration and we discuss all the areas in which they had the impacts of their lives, we should have that type of course. Go to Ellis Island, it would be an excellent field trip that we have, and really focus in on that class. I don't think it should be part of this class and water it down. This particular class is supposed to be on specifically on race, and it should stay that way. The course description says we have a course that examines the power structures, provides the intellectual and theoretical tools to deconstruct from students to ideally develop, and I underlined, a broader understanding of the minority experience with the scope of American history and society. This statement in itself should not be controversial and fully aligns with the fact that the purpose of our schools, as I mentioned earlier, is to educate. Where the controversy seems to be surrounding this course and the materials are reviewed is excuse me a second, is when we talk about the controversial issues, where it says, I'm subtitling here, drawing upon information and insights from the widest range of resources. I looked at what the New Jersey School Board Association had to say. Likewise, concerns of individuals in the community, which are brought to the attention of the board member, cannot be acted by the board member, but referred through established channels such as the board president and the chief school administrator. We've had a number of community members have concerns about the course, and that's why I took two channels. I spoke with people that contacted me, but I don't think it was appropriate for a single board member to make decisions, which is why we have brought this to this meeting this evening. My role, though, however, as a school member is not to rubber stamp every issue, but to listen, have the discussion, review the facts, provide recommendations, and make the best decision possible for the welfare of the district, the community, and the students. All of us as board members were elected to represent all of the community. At the June 9, 2018 SIP committee meeting, it was noted a board member had suggested a great point about having our supervisor of social studies and both teacher come to be present at a future board meeting to the full board so we can hear the kind of diligence and thoughtfulness that went into crafting this class. This was a suggestion that came back from the June 2018 notes. And then after that, I was on the curriculum committee that year where the course was first introduced, or really the concept came about. When it was initially discussed, the board did not receive the course of study description until I actually requested it on October 30th. So I realized the course has been developed in the past year and a half, but really the board has not had a full view of the course or been able to present it to the community since a little over a month ago. And I requested it to be sent to the board because it wasn't originally sent to the board, and we discussed it for the first time at the November 12th meeting. And that was really the first time we were able to have the discussion both amongst the board and hear the comments from the community members. And finally, all members of the school board have seen and heard these concerns. I understand we want to get this course on the agenda for the 2021 school year, and I fully believe that should happen. The one thing I do believe is we should do a couple things in order to go and do that. We've heard many people say the board should review the courses and diligently review them, but the board members, while we try our best, I don't think we have the full comprehensive understanding of, we can do our research on Google, we can hear our conversations, but the social study teachers who do this research have the expert opinion on how this course should proceed. That being said, we're also, as board members, elected to listen to the community, and the community has concerns. We've heard a number of books being recommended. There was a couple books that came in through email. I looked at the reviews on one of them. It had over 12,000 five-star reviews, or should say, quote, 4.5-star reviews, and had is a New York Times #1 bestseller that people want us to consider for the book, for the course, excuse me. I think we need to go and have these materials that have been suggested. We can't go as a board go and decide them. what I'm recommending is that we go and listen to, have the social study committees review the suggested materials that have been submitted directly to the board members and summarize, and shown on the video, and summarize how these materials either fit or don't fit into the course curriculum, and then present back to us and say, here's the materials we recommend and why, or here's the materials we don't recommend and why. I've seen 30, 40 different references to books. I, sitting here alone, cannot make a decision on whether these books are appropriate for the course or whether they provide the proper perspective. I want the Social Studies Committee, I realize the supervisor wasn't able to be here tonight, and I don't also think we should put the teachers necessarily in the line of fire to go and address these courses directly. It's not their job. What I think we should do is listen to the community, what they've said, see the course materials. I know we want to get it on this calendar, but my recommendation is we either have a special meeting later in this month or we have a meeting on January 3rd where we have a reorganization meeting, which should somebody can tell me if that would hold up, whether we can get into the course catalog. Give the Social Studies Committee the time to review these materials and suggested materials, and then come back and say, okay, these materials are appropriate or not appropriate. These materials are providing a full perspective or they're not providing a full perspective, so that we can go and hear firsthand from the committee or the supervisor of the committee on what the appropriate action we should take. We've had 2 board meetings to discuss this, and we need people that really have an expert opinion in this to go and look at this course. So what I want to do, as I mentioned earlier, I want to make a motion that we go and not hold the vote this evening, have the course department, the social studies department, go and look at the suggested materials that were submitted both through email, suggested on this video, and any other materials that were presented, to go and review those materials, see if they're appropriate or not to include in the course and provide the perspective, and then either have to hold a special meeting in December or on the January 3rd meeting. So that's the motion I'd like to make, and if anyone would like to second.
Okay, so let me understand what you're proposing. Basically, that we postpone the meeting until the vote.
No, postpone the vote and have a special meeting where we specifically, after the Social Studies Committee has had time to go and review the materials and have them come and present, the supervisor come and present, to go and discuss the materials that were recommended and say, yes, we've incorporated these materials and here why, or no, we're excluding these materials and here why, because as a board, we don't have that knowledge to go and make that. And we've heard multiple people state that the social studies team are the experts.
Procedurally, he's asking that, making a motion to table the vote and referring it to a committee of our staff.
Okay, and I mean, I think for
Those
Robert's...
are 2 separate decisions. But
2 separate decisions to table the vote?
tabling is one and referring it to a committee is another.
And referring it to a committee is another. Okay. I just want to clarify, and I think Gretchen has, one, all of our courses come from committee. We start on committee. This class is not being handled any different than any class that's brought forth to the board. It is discussed in committee in, tell me, what's the?
Oh, curriculum, instruction, and program?
It's great, right, but the instructional council puts together. So this course is following the same procedure that we follow for all of our courses. So it stays in committee. Once the committee approves that it's going to go to the board, it's presented to the full board. So that, just so everybody knows, that's how all of our classes are handled within the district. The other problem I have with this, and I'm okay to vote on it, but many people would suggest that we read a lot of books. They may say for the comparative religion class, people may have 5 or 6 other books that they want to suggest. I believe that our teachers and our administrators are the experts here and have read maybe a lot of those books and possibly at this point in time have already chosen not to include them in this scenario. So I don't know.
I have no concerns with presenting the recommendations that we've received to the staff and having them review them. I don't know that it needs to derail our vote tonight, though, because the recommended reading list is just that. It's not there. Any course reading list and the program and the materials that are used to support that course reading list are supplemented throughout the year anyway. And not all of them are necessarily read during the course of the administration. It depends on the teacher. There are a lot of variables. So I don't think, I have no objection with presenting a number of the books, some of which I've read myself and I think are great, to the staff and letting them decide if they want to integrate them. Maybe they haven't seen them. But I don't think it needs to derail our vote tonight on the substance of the course. And I am a little worried that it's a slippery slope, because are we going to now, every time someone from the community emails us a recommendation for a course material, all of a sudden we're going to hold up voting on a
like we said, we've had 170 courses and on a 5-year cycle that we go through, and we've never had people come and
That
question.
was my point earlier.
Right,
We're
and that's
being a
my
little
point now.
disingenuous.
I don't think we're going to have a flood of people questioning calculus classes or geometry classes or English classes. I think we need to have this discussion, had to bring the materials to the board. We're not changing the date of implementation. I hope that we can go and have this discussion where we get a 9-0 vote, that we can go and say, we all approve, and we show some unity as a board, and not have a split decision for this board. So we're giving that opportunity to go and give the social studies department the opportunity to go and review the suggestions, see if anything is warranted, and then come back. We're not changing the date. We're still going to have it, a plan to go and have it on the 2021 schedule, but have a discussion to see if any of the suggestions by the community are warranted. Because as a community, as a board member, we are required to go, and we are elected by the community, and we shouldn't dismiss their comments.
Okay, I just have a practical issue. It's not a philosophical one, it's a practical one. So we have about 2.5 weeks left before the break. The course, if it's going to be offered next year, does have to be approved in January, so it can be in the course of studies. And the social studies teachers, their schedule is kind of set from now until the break. They have courses to teach, they have lesson plans to do, they have tests to grade. They're not going to have time to stop, and they may know all the books that would be recommended and they can tell you off the top of their head, but they may not. And the social studies supervisor, she has observations to do in all 10 of our schools between now and the break. So just practically speaking, forget anything else, I don't believe that the social study experts are going to be able to review whatever recommendations there are and still do their duties and still have a course ready for September 2020.
Procedurally, we vote to approve a course of study, and we vote as a board to adopt textbooks. We don't vote to adopt supplemental resources. Every time a teacher gets a new workbook, we don't hold a vote to decide if they can use it. We delegate that to our supervisors to determine if a resource is appropriate for a course and complies with the course of study and board intent. We're spending a lot of time talking about something we don't vote on. I'll just leave it at that.
Can I?
Okay,
Go ahead, go.
You go first. All right, I just want to read something from the New Jersey School Boards Association, because it doesn't seem to be getting any validation. The board's role in curriculum standards for recommendations. This is from the New Jersey School Boards Association. Document clearly asks that the board encourage the collaborative planning in curriculum, collaborative planning between the staff and the administration. It also says the board has a process to elicit suggestions from parents and citizens, and we have done that, and we have gotten unsolicited suggestions from parents and citizens. Okay, it says we should be taking that into account during the process. It also says that the criteria to be used to measure pupils' progress should meet district goals and objectives. How can we know that our course is meeting these guidelines without reviewing all of the information more thoroughly? I don't see how that's possible. I have the backup documents with me.
Go ahead. So specific to the motion on the floor right now is that, as Gretchen had mentioned, at least 5, if not 6 of the board members here have sat in 3, if not 4 or 5 meetings that address this issue, and we're a committee, and it's been sent out by the committee, recommended by the committee to be voted on for the first reading, and now this is the second reading. So I don't think that there's a need in terms of going back into some of the comments that have been made in terms of what's needed for our vote, both on the original motion, which I seconded, and now with Mike Beelan's motion to table the original motion and now make an amendment to that or offer the new motion. I think that we should just take a vote on Michael's motion to table, and then we can go on to the second reading.
Did Brian?
No, I
Okay.
agree with Rob.
Okay. So we're ready to vote on.
Motion to table the resolution.
Right.
Mike Beelan.
Yes.
Kent Diamond.
No.
Brendan Galligan.
No.
Rob Garrison.
No.
Brian Morrissey.
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg. No. Tara Porto. Yes. Peggy Oster.
No.
Amy Root.
No.
No is the majority.
So through the president, can we now vote on the second reading, passage of the second reading?
We can now vote on.
The Holocaust was brought up multiple times by the community. I'm not sure why the Holocaust keeps getting brought up. That is not the point that was made by me. The point that was made, which is really important and has gotten no comment from you, Dr. Dolan, or you, Peggy, or anybody, is that critical race theory, the premise of this class, has been accused of being anti-Semitic and anti-Asian, and those are valid points in a published book. That needs to be included in the course. How everybody can just ignore that is beyond my comprehension.
I can address that for a second. So the book that you mentioned, I think Yeah, the book that you mentioned, Tara, that's from 1997 when critical race, so I Googled, as we all like to do, I Googled in earnest the associations with anti-Semitism, you'd have to show me more, and critical race theory. And by the way, this course isn't a course on critical race theory. It's a course as been described. It's a course that's meant to look through a filter of race at laws that have been in place over decades, a couple centuries, that have oppressed. So if we're looking at things like separate but equal in a classroom, what better way to say where did it come from, what are the ramifications, and where are we now because of it? So that's the course. I think we've all been projecting into the classroom what this course is, and some of our greatest fears are in this classroom that hasn't even started yet.
Wait. We're not allowed, you're not allowed to speak from the community to the podium. The community has had its opportunity to speak, and Paul is, but he is addressing.
So critical race theory was described, sure. Yeah, based upon critical race theory, which someone read. Yeah,
Paul.
Okay. Right.
We are ready to vote on this class at this point in time. So
I don't know of any other than a book that was published by the authors you mentioned in 1997 when critical race theory was, I guess, very political. A lot of time has passed since then. I can't find any references to why on earth this would be considered anti-Semitic other than suggesting that it's leaving out that discussion. One thing I did see in a review of that book was that by the nature of the term privilege, somehow it was excluding or there was some kind of offense that the authors took with regard to, I think it was Asian Americans and the Jewish population, that somehow that there should have been some connection to that. But I'm not aware. I was concerned about your concern. I can't find it. If you can share it with me, that would be great.
Wait.
I mean, there's others. I have 3 pages. I don't want to take
Yeah, but
Right.
I mean.
Right. I think we're
right.
ready. I think at this point in time, we are ready as a board to vote on this class. So.
Can I make a statement first? I'm sorry. I'll keep it brief. I'm going to reiterate the concerns I expressed at the last board meeting. First, let me preface my concerns by stating I unequivocally support the thoughtful discussion of racial discrimination in the classroom. If properly conducted, I believe courses exploring controversial issues such as the issue of racial discrimination can have a definite positive impact on young minds. With that said, As I stated publicly at the last board meeting, given the proposed course curriculum in its current form, I could not ascertain how the course resources would address all of the learning objectives defined in the individual units. And that concern was also expressed by members of the Asian community. We received an email from one person and others who were afraid in the Asian community who came to me in confidence and told me they were afraid to come forward. That is sad, okay? Bottom line, the board needs to be able to ascertain that the course contents and materials do not persuade students to a particular point of view and do not stifle a spirit of free inquiry. Therefore, I must regretfully vote no on this course in its current form from being offered at the high school level until those concerns are addressed. This is why Mike put forth that motion. We should be able to speak to the individuals who developed this course so we can address these concerns. I'm not going to make recommendations about texts or books that should be read. I just want to address these concerns for my edification and for the edification of members of the community who have those same concerns. We as a board have an obligation. We're supposed to be representing the public here. Okay? So that's why I'm at a no. I wish somebody could come and I would be happy to be proven wrong, that I'm not misinterpreting something, but I haven't had that opportunity. I'm not on the curriculum committee. I was not on the board in 2018. I didn't have the opportunity to do that. Dr. Dolan, I sent you an email, and I read Peggy's response about why we could not have a member of the social studies department to come and speak to this course tonight. I didn't like the answer. Somebody should, I respect that they're very busy, so am I. But they can make the time, they can give me 30 minutes of their time. That's all I'm asking for to address these concerns.
Right. Probably would have been helpful if I had received that request before the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend.
Well, it would have been nice to have this course for my review. I just got this, I just became aware of this course last month. I needed time to digest it. I want to be thoughtful and give this the proper due diligence it deserves, like I do with everything.
And I agree with you.
Well, you didn't.
Yeah. But unfortunately, Brian, one of the things is we do work on a committee basis. So when the documents are provided to the whole board, it's your responsibility to make a couple phone calls if you have questions that you need answers.
If I send an email, I think that is I'm making
But you
an
can't
attempt.
send it 2 days beforehand and expect the teacher to be able to arrive on a Tuesday to discuss
I'm
the
not,
course.
and that's why I'm saying table this until we can learn from that. What is
Well,
the harm in waiting a couple of weeks?
I don't see there's a need to wait a couple of weeks. I think that,
Right,
right.
I think I've made my point. We'll agree to disagree then.
Okay?
Yes,
Right.
I would
We're going to
like
go
to.
ahead with the vote, and it's, it'll be what it'll be.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm absolutely for the course and offering this course within the high school, but I want to have a review and hear from the Social Studies Committee, so I have to vote no. Thank you.
Wait, can I just make a point? So we're voting actually not only on this course, but also the dance
Correct.
curriculum. So I think we need to,
Right.
if you're okay with the dance, I don't want to vote down the dance curriculum.
I'm fine with dance.
So I just think we need to make this
Right,
stand.
I'm fine with both courses, but because we have not been able to have it reviewed by the Social Studies Committee with the board, I'm voting no. I'm voting yes for dance.
Okay.
Ken Diamond.
Yes.
Thank you, Ken.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Rob Garrison. Yes. Brian Morrissey.
No.
Gretchen Oley.
Yes.
Tara Porto.
No.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes, emphatically yes.
Okay. Once again, I do thank the public for coming out and bringing their comments forth, and I do appreciate all of the comments of the board members. Even if it doesn't agree with my opinion and so forth, I listen to them, I hear them, and I take them into consideration. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Moving on to finance. I'd like the board to consider, I'm sorry, I've lost it on my numbers here. Items number 1 to 12. Do I have a second? Kent? Yeah, I know. I have the page marked here under all those things. I'd like to call out item number 10. The board would like to accept a gift of $884.40 from the Lincoln School PTO to purchase 4 portable radios. Thank you very much for your gift. Lincoln School will appreciate those radios.
Let's vote.
Yes.
Ken Diamond.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Rob Garrison. Yes. Brian Morrissey.
Yes.
Gretchen Oley. Yes. Tara Porto. Yes. Peggy Astor.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Okay. Technology, Michael.
We haven't had a meeting since we last met, but we will have a meeting on December 20th.
Okay.
No update.
Okay, I'd like the board to consider the notes for the record. Okay?
On the notes for the record, I'd just like to call out, you can see every week all the work of the policies committee, the policies we review and don't amend, particularly all the bylaws that we looked at over the at our last meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any unfinished business? No? Do we have any new business? Any liaison reports? Nope.
Yeah, I was at. Pass the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
This last 2 weeks ago, was down in Trenton for the New Jersey School Boards Association's Delegate Assembly. Steve Sweeney was the keynote speaker, and 165 school boards were represented. The one resolution that was brought forth was from Hillsborough asking for some relief from the 2% cap to meet adequacy. Basically, their state aid is being cut. They had been receiving more state aid, so they hadn't been taxing their district enough. And now they want to be able to exceed the cap to make up that difference. The resolution was supported, was 80-something%. And Steve Sweeney promised to pass it forth into the legislature. I don't know if anything will come from that. But additionally, I joined a committee that will be working with Steve Sweeney to re-examine the school funding formula for the state. There's 12 people from various parts of the state that are going to be tackling this formula to make sure that not just urban needs are met, but rural and suburban needs are met as well.
Thank you. I will recognize the public for questions or comments about any other issues. Seeing nobody come forth to the podium, I would like to approve the following resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law and harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Do I have a second? Second. Rob? Thanks.
We're going to room 11, which is down the hall.